The moment Victoria Hale's champagne glass shattered against the marble floor, everyone in the exhibition hall knew something was terribly wrong. The billionaire CEO stood frozen, staring at a 7-year-old girl wearing a silver bracelet that shouldn't exist, because Victoria had buried that bracelet with her lost daughter years ago. The man beside the child stepped forward, his calloused mechanic's hands protective on the girl's shoulders, and spoke 5 words that would destroy everything Victoria thought she knew. "She's your daughter. I raised her." If you want to see how a single father and a powerful CEO collide over the child they both love, stay until the end. And comment below what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The gallery smelled like old money and new wine. Victoria Hale moved through the crowd with the practiced ease of someone who'd spent a lifetime pretending to care about conversations that bored her senseless. Her black dress probably cost more than most people's cars, but she wore it the way other people wore jeans, carelessly, like it didn't matter. Because to her, it didn't. "The quarterly projections are exceeding expectations," someone was saying. A man in a suit that tried too hard. She couldn't remember his name, didn't particularly want to. "Your vision for autonomous systems is really..." Victoria hummed, her eyes already drifting past him toward the bar. She'd been CEO of Hale Technologies for 6 years. 6 years of board meetings and hostile takeovers in tech journals, calling her everything from visionary to Ice Queen. The Ice Queen thing didn't bother her. Better to be cold than weak, better to be feared than forgotten. She was 30 years old and owned half the skyline. That should have meant something. It didn't. "Ms. Hale?" Her assistant Jennifer appeared at her elbow with a tablet. "The mayor wants a photo op and the tech reporter from Bloomberg is asking about the autonomous vehicle launch next month. Tell the mayor I'm unavailable. Tell Bloomberg we'll release a statement when we're ready." Victoria took a glass of champagne from a passing waiter without looking at him. "Anything else?" "The children's art program is set up in the East Wing. You're supposed to walk through and..." "Right. The charity thing." Victoria drained half her glass. "Let's get it over with." The East Wing was louder. Kids everywhere, their art taped to the walls in crooked lines that someone had tried to make look intentional. Parents hovered nearby, proud and anxious in equal measure. Victoria hated this part. The smiling, the pretending to care about finger paintings and macaroni sculptures. But it was good PR. Hale Technologies supports local youth programs. Her publicist had been very clear about that. She moved through the room with Jennifer half a step behind, pausing at each display long enough to look interested, but not long enough to actually have to talk to anyone. A painting of a house with a smoking chimney, a clay dog with 3 legs, a collage made entirely of bottle caps. Then she saw the bracelet. It was on a little girl's wrist, silver and delicate, catching the light as the child reached up to adjust her painting on the wall. Victoria stopped walking so suddenly that Jennifer almost ran into her. "Ms. Hale?" Victoria didn't answer. Couldn't. Her entire body had gone cold. The bracelet had a small charm dangling from it, a letter V in flowing script. She'd seen that bracelet before. Of course she'd seen it before. She'd bought it 7 years ago in a small jewelry store she couldn't remember the name of, during a time in her life she'd spent considerable money trying to forget. It couldn't be the same one, except it was. She knew it was. The way you know things in your gut before your brain catches up. Victoria's champagne glass slipped from her fingers. It hit the marble floor and exploded, sending shards and liquid scattering across the polished stone. Conversation stopped. Heads turned. Jennifer made a startled noise and immediately waved over a staff member with a napkin. But Victoria wasn't looking at the mess. She was looking at the little girl, 7 years old, maybe 8. Dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, paint stains on her fingers. She wore a simple blue dress that had been carefully ironed but was starting to wrinkle at the hem where she'd been fidgeting with it. And her face? Victoria's chest felt tight. The girl had her eyes, the same unusual shade of gray-green that Victoria saw in the mirror every morning. The same slightly pointed chin. Even the way she stood, one hip cocked slightly to the side, felt familiar in a way that made Victoria's stomach turn over. A man stepped forward from where he'd been standing a few feet away. Early 30s, maybe. Tall enough that he had to look down at most people, but he didn't use the height to intimidate. Worn jeans and a button-down shirt that had seen better days. His hands were scarred and calloused, working hands. He moved to put himself slightly between Victoria and the girl, protective but not aggressive. Is everything all right? He asked. His voice was quiet, careful, the kind of voice you used when you didn't want to startle someone. Victoria opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Jennifer stepped in smoothly. I'm so sorry about the glass. Ms. Hale she's had a long evening. Are you and your daughter enjoying the exhibition? The man glanced at Jennifer, then back at Victoria. His eyes were brown and steady. We are. Sophie's very excited to have her painting on display. Sophie. The little girl, Sophie, tugged on the man's sleeve. Dad, you're supposed to let people look at the art without talking to them, Ms. Chen said. Ms. Chen's probably right, the man agreed, but he didn't move. Dad. He'd called her Dad. Victoria's brain was working too slowly, like she was trying to think through water. The bracelet, the face, the eyes. 7 years. 7 years ago, she'd been 23 and stupid. 23 and pregnant and terrified because the father was her business partner, Marcus. And Marcus had made it very clear that a baby didn't fit into his 5-year plan. 23 and alone in a way she'd never been before because her parents had died when she was 19 and left her a company she barely knew how to run. She'd trusted the wrong person. Elena Marsh, her senior advisor, the woman who'd promised to help, who'd arranged everything, the private hospital, the discreet adoption. You're too young for this, Victoria. You have a company to build, a legacy to protect. Victoria had held her daughter for exactly 45 minutes, long enough to notice the tiny birthmark on her left shoulder, long enough to clasp the silver bracelet around her impossibly small wrist, long enough to memorize the weight of her before Elena took her away. The adoption was supposed to be closed, final, clean. But 3 months later, Victoria had changed her mind. She'd hired investigators, lawyers, anyone who could find her daughter, bring her back. That's when Elena told her the baby had died. Complications, she'd said. The adoptive family had been devastated. There'd been a funeral. It was tragic, but these things happen sometimes. Better to move on. Focus on the company. Victoria had wanted to die herself. She'd thrown herself into work instead, built Hale Technologies into an empire, made herself untouchable, because if you were powerful enough, rich enough, nothing could hurt you again. Except here was a little girl wearing her dead daughter's bracelet. Where did she get that? Victoria's voice came out wrong, too sharp, too raw. She pointed at Sophie's wrist. The man's expression shifted. Not angry, exactly. Wary. I'm sorry? The bracelet. Where did it come from? Sophie looked down at her wrist, then back up at Victoria with big, confused eyes. The man, her father apparently, put his hand on Sophie's shoulder. I think we should probably... I need to know where she got that bracelet. Victoria was aware that her voice was getting louder, that people were starting to stare, but she couldn't stop. It's mine. It belonged to... She couldn't finish the sentence. Jennifer touched her arm. Ms. Hale, maybe we should step outside and... Victoria shook her off. She took a step towards Sophie, and the man immediately shifted to block her path. Not threatening, just there. Ma'am, I don't know what this is about, but you're scaring her. His voice was still quiet, but there was steel underneath now. I'm going to need you to step back. I'm not trying to scare her, Victoria's hands were shaking. When had they started shaking? That bracelet. I bought it 7 years ago. I put it on my daughter's wrist right before... She stopped. The man was staring at her with an expression she couldn't read. The gallery had gone quiet. Everyone was watching now. Victoria Hale, the Ice Queen, falling apart in public over a child's bracelet. Sophie pressed closer to the man's leg. Dad, I want to go. I know, sweetheart. Just give me a minute. He didn't take his eyes off Victoria. You're saying this is your bracelet? Yes. And you had a daughter 7 years ago? Yes. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, what happened to her? Victoria's throat felt too tight. They told me she died. Something flickered across the man's face. Understanding, maybe. Or pity. Victoria hated both. Ms. Hale, he said carefully, I think you and I need to have a conversation. But not here. Not with all these people. I need to know... I understand. But not here. He glanced down at Sophie, who was looking increasingly upset. Let me take her home first, get her settled, then we can talk. Victoria wanted to scream, wanted to grab the little girl and demand answers and make everything make sense again. But the rational part of her brain, the part that had built a billion-dollar company, knew he was right. Fine. She dug in her purse, pulled out a business card with shaking fingers. My private number's on the back. Call me. Tonight. He took the card, studied it briefly. Ethan Cole. And yes, I'll call. Don't. Victoria swallowed hard. Don't disappear, please. Ethan looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded once and guided Sophie toward the exit, one hand protective on her back. Victoria watched them go, watched the little girl with her face and her eyes and her dead daughter's bracelet walk away with a stranger who called himself her father. Jennifer was talking, saying something about damage control and media statements, but Victoria couldn't hear her over the rushing in her ears. Get me everything on Ethan Cole, she said quietly. Everything. Where he lives, where he works, his financial records, his goddamn shoe size. I want it on my desk in 3 hours. Ms. Hale. 3 hours, Jennifer. She turned and walked out of the gallery without looking back. People parted to let her through, whispering behind their hands. Let them whisper. Let them put it on social media, call it a breakdown, speculate about her mental health. None of it mattered, because somewhere in this city, there was a 7-year-old girl who might be her daughter, and a man named Ethan Cole who had answers. Victoria was very good at getting what she wanted. Ugh. Ethan Cole's apartment was on the 4th floor of a building that had seen better days sometime around 1987. The elevator worked about half the time, the hallway smelled like Mrs. Chen's cooking from 4B, and the radiator made sounds like a dying animal every morning at 6. It was home. He unlocked the door and held it open for Sophie, who trudged inside with her backpack dragging behind her. She'd been quiet the whole subway ride back, which wasn't like her. Usually she talked nonstop about her day, about who said what at lunch and what Miss Chen taught them and whether they could get pizza for dinner. Tonight, nothing. Ethan locked the door behind them and hung his keys on the hook. You hungry, kiddo? Sophie shrugged. That's not an answer. I guess. He studied her for a moment. She was still wearing the blue dress they'd picked out together last week, the one she'd been so excited about for the art show. Her painting, a family portrait of the two of them standing in front of their building, had been carefully rolled up and rubber banded, and she was clutching it against her chest like it might escape. Ethan crouched down to her level. Hey, talk to me. What's going on in that head of yours? Sophie bit her lip. Who was that lady? I don't know yet. Why did she look at me like that? Like what? Ethan wanted to ask. But he knew. He'd seen it. The way Victoria Hale had stared at Sophie like she was seeing a ghost. The way her hands had shaken when she'd pointed at the bracelet. I'm not sure, he said honestly. But I'm going to find out, okay? I promise. Is she going to take me away? Ethan's chest tightened. No, no one's taking you anywhere. But she said, Sophie. He waited until she looked at him. You are my daughter. You're staying right here with me. Nothing that lady said changes that, got it? Sophie nodded slowly, but she didn't look convinced. Come on. Ethan straightened up and ruffled her hair. Let's get some food in you, and then maybe we'll watch that cartoon you like, the one with the talking llamas. It's alpacas, Dad. Right, alpacas. My mistake. That got him a small smile, which he counted as a win. By the time Sophie was fed and bathed and tucked into bed with her stuffed elephant, it was almost 9 o'clock. Ethan stood in her doorway for a moment, watching her sleep. She'd wrapped herself around the elephant the way she always did, face peaceful in a way it hadn't been since they left the gallery. 7 years. He'd been driving a cab 7 years ago, working doubles to keep his head above water after the accident that took his wife and unborn child. Working himself into the ground because if he stopped moving, he'd have to think, and thinking hurt too much. Then one night, a storm rolled in, the kind that turned the streets into rivers and sent everyone running for cover. He'd picked up one last fare, a young woman, mid-20s, clearly upset about something. She'd given him an address near the hospital and spent the whole ride crying quietly in the back seat. He'd felt bad for her, but he hadn't asked questions. People didn't get in cabs at midnight during thunderstorms because their lives were going great. She'd paid cash, thanked him, and disappeared into the rain. Ethan had started to drive away when he heard it, a sound so small he almost missed it under the rain hammering on the roof. A baby crying. She was in the back seat, wrapped in a pink blanket that was already soaked through, maybe a few days old, red-faced and screaming. The silver bracelet on her wrist caught the streetlight. Ethan had sat there in his cab, holding this tiny, furious human, and felt something click into place inside his chest, something that had been broken since the day he buried his wife. He'd called the police, of course. They'd taken the baby to the hospital, started an investigation, tried to find the mother. But the young woman had paid cash, hadn't given her name, and the security cameras near the hospital had been broken for weeks. No leads, no family. Ethan had visited the baby every day after work, sat in the NICU holding her tiny hand through the incubator. The nurses started to recognize him, to smile when he showed up. When the social worker asked if he'd considered fostering, he'd said yes before he fully understood what he was agreeing to. When they asked about adoption 6 months later, he'd said yes again. Sophie became his daughter. Legally, officially, completely. He'd never regretted it. Not once, not even during the hard nights when she was sick, or the expensive hospital visits, or the times when his bank account hit zero and he had to decide between fixing the car and buying groceries. She was his kid. That was all that mattered. But the bracelet. Ethan walked back to the living room and pulled Victoria Hale's business card from his pocket. Expensive paper, embossed lettering. Her private number was written on the back in neat, precise handwriting. He should call. He'd promised he would. But what the hell was he supposed to say? His phone buzzed before he could decide. Unknown number. Ethan answered it. Hello? Mr. Cole? Victoria Hale's voice was crisp, controlled, nothing like the woman who'd shattered a champagne glass and stared at Sophie like she'd seen the dead come back to life. I hope I'm not calling too late. It's fine. Sophie's asleep. Good. That's good. A pause. I'd like to meet with you, tomorrow, if possible. There are things we need to discuss. Yeah, I figured. There's a coffee shop on 5th and… No. Ethan cut her off. Not in public. Your office or my apartment. Your choice. Silence on the other end. Then, why not public? Because whatever this conversation is, I don't want it turning into a circus. He'd seen the way people had stared at the gallery, seen phones coming out to record. My kid doesn't need to be gossip fodder. I see. Victoria's voice softened slightly. Your apartment, then, if you're comfortable with that. Tomorrow, 7 p.m. I'll text you the address. Mr. Cole, it's Ethan. Ethan. She said his name like she was testing it out. Can I ask you something? Depends on the question. The bracelet. How long has Sophie had it? Ethan closed his eyes. Since the night I found her. He heard Victoria's breath catch. Found her? 7 years ago. Someone left her in the back of my cab during a thunderstorm, wrapped in a pink blanket, wearing that bracelet. She was maybe 3 days old. Victoria didn't say anything for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. Where? Near Memorial Hospital, corner of 8th and Pine. Oh my God. Ms. Hale. Victoria. I don't know what happened 7 years ago. I don't know who you are beyond the CEO stuff, and I don't know why you think Sophie might be your daughter, but if there's even a chance that she is… He trailed off. We need to handle this right, for her sake. I understand. Do you? Because from where I'm standing, you're a billionaire with unlimited resources who just found out the daughter she thought was dead might be alive. That's a lot of power. A lot of ways this could go wrong. I'm not going to hurt her, Ethan. I don't think you want to, but want and do are different things. Another pause. You're protective of her. She's my daughter. Biologically, she might be mine. Biology doesn't mean shit if you weren't there when she was scared or sick or learning to tie her shoes. Ethan's voice came out harder than he meant it to. I was there, every day for 7 years. That makes her mine. I'm not trying to take her from you. Then what are you trying to do? Victoria was quiet. I don't know yet, she admitted finally, but I need to find out the truth. I think you need that too. She was right. He hated that she was right. Tomorrow at 7, Ethan said. Don't be late. He hung up before she could respond. This Victoria didn't sleep. She stood in her penthouse apartment, all glass and steel and empty rooms that echoed when you walked through them, and stared at the city lights below. Jennifer had delivered the files on Ethan Cole 3 hours ago, and Victoria had read through every page twice. 32 years old, born and raised in the city, married at 24 to Sarah Cole, née Bennett. Wife died in a car accident when she was 6 months pregnant. Ethan had been driving. Not his fault. Drunk driver ran a red light. But that probably didn't make it easier. He'd worked at Bennett Auto Repair for 5 years before the accident. Kept working thereafter. Now he was a senior mechanic, made decent money by normal standards, practically nothing by hers. Lived in a rent-controlled apartment in a neighborhood that was trying hard to gentrify and not quite succeeding. No criminal record. No debt beyond student loans he'd been paying off steadily for a decade. No red flags anywhere. He'd adopted Sophie 7 years ago through legal channels. Everything properly documented and filed. A single father raising a daughter who wasn't biologically his because someone had abandoned her in his cab. Victoria had investigators working on Elena Marsh. The woman had disappeared 3 years ago, shortly before Victoria started asking uncomfortable questions about the adoption. Vanished with enough money from various shell accounts to live comfortably somewhere without extradition treaties. But the timeline matched, the location matched, the bracelet matched, and Sophie's face. Victoria had pulled up the photo from the gallery website. Sophie standing next to her painting, grinning at the camera with paint on her nose. The resemblance was undeniable once you knew to look for it. Her phone buzzed, a text from Ethan with an address in Queens. She should send her lawyers, let them handle this professionally, keep her emotions out of it. But when had Victoria ever done things the easy way? Bugs. The next evening, Victoria stood outside Ethan's building at 6:55 p.m. and wondered what the hell she was doing. She'd changed clothes 3 times before settling on jeans and a sweater. Casual, approachable, not like she was coming from a board meeting. She'd taken a car service instead of her usual driver, told Jennifer she'd be unreachable for a few hours. Now she was here, and she had no idea what to say. The building's front door buzzed open before she could touch it. She climbed 4 flights of stairs. The elevator had an out-of-order sign taped to it, and found Ethan waiting in his doorway. "You're early," he said, "better than late." He studied her for a moment, then stepped back to let her in. "Sophie's at a friend's place for a couple hours. Figured we should talk alone first." The apartment was small but clean. Lived in. A couch that had seen better days, a TV that was probably older than Sophie, bookshelves made from cinder blocks and planks. Drawings covered the fridge, held up by magnets shaped like letters. A pink backpack sat by the door next to a pair of small sneakers. It looked like a home. Nothing like Victoria's penthouse. "Coffee?" Ethan offered. "Please." He moved to the kitchen, really just a corner of the room with a sink and a 2-burner stove, and started the coffee maker. Victoria sat on the couch because standing felt too formal, too much like she was about to give a presentation. "Nice place," she said, and immediately felt stupid. It wasn't nice. It was falling apart. But it was clearly loved, and that counted for something. "It's what I can afford." Ethan didn't sound defensive, just matter of fact. "Rent control helps." "I wasn't I know." He brought over 2 mugs, handed her one. "You're nervous." "I'm not nervous." "You've been fidgeting with your watch since you sat down." Victoria looked down. He was right. She forced herself to stop. Ethan sat in the armchair across from her. "So, you want to tell me what happened 7 years ago?" Victoria wrapped her hands around the coffee mug. It was warm, grounding. "I was 23, pregnant, alone. My business partner, the father, made it clear he wanted nothing to do with it. I was running a company I'd inherited after my parents died, and I was terrified I was going to lose everything. So you gave her up." "I tried to." Victoria's throat felt tight. "I had an advisor, Elena Marsh. She arranged everything. A private adoption," she said. "A good family who couldn't have children. I'd get to hold her, say goodbye, and then I could move on with my life." But I held her and I couldn't do it. Couldn't just let her go." Victoria stared into her coffee. "I put that bracelet on her wrist. Fastened it myself. It was too big for her, kept sliding around. I thought, I thought maybe someday when she was older, someone would tell her about me, that she'd have something from her birth mother. Ethan didn't say anything. Elena took her. I signed papers. It was supposed to be done. Victoria's voice cracked slightly. 3 months later, I changed my mind. Hired lawyers, investigators. I was ready to fight for her, to get her back. That's when Elena told me she'd died. Complications from a congenital heart defect they hadn't caught. The adoptive family had been devastated. There'd been a funeral. Jesus. I checked, called hospitals, looked at death records. Everything Elena said was backed up by paperwork. So I believed her. Victoria looked up at Ethan. I spent 7 years thinking my daughter was dead. And then I saw Sophie wearing her bracelet. Ethan set his coffee down. How sure are you? About what? That Sophie is your daughter, not just some kid who happens to have the same bracelet. I had that bracelet custom made. There's an inscription inside, the date and time she was born. Have you ever looked? No. Can I? Ethan hesitated, then got up and walked to a small dresser near the couch. He opened the top drawer, pulled out the silver bracelet, the same one Victoria had seen at the gallery, still small and delicate and exactly as she remembered. He handed it to her. Victoria's hands were shaking again as she turned the bracelet over. There, on the inside of the charm, were the tiny engraved numbers. March 15th, 1911, 47 p.m. March 15th, 11:47 p.m. The exact time Victoria's daughter had been born. It's her, Victoria whispered. It's really her. We should do a DNA test, Ethan said quietly. To be sure. Yes, of course. Victoria couldn't stop looking at the bracelet. How is she? Is she happy? Healthy? She's great, smart as hell, stubborn as a mule, loves art and hates broccoli. She's got your eyes. I noticed. Yeah, I bet you did. Ethan took the bracelet back gently, like it might break. Look, Victoria, I don't know where this is going, but I need you to understand something. Victoria looked up at him. Sophie is my daughter, Ethan said firmly. I've raised her since she was 3 days old. I've been there for every scraped knee, every nightmare, every parent-teacher conference. I'm the one she calls when she's scared. I'm the one who knows she needs her elephant to sleep and that she won't eat eggs if they're scrambled, but she's fine with them fried. I'm not trying to replace you, aren't you? Because you're a billionaire, Victoria. You could give her everything I can't. Private schools, trips to Paris, a trust fund that would set her up for life. And I'm just a mechanic in Queens who can barely afford her art supplies. Money isn't everything. Ethan laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. Easy to say when you have it. You think I don't know what I'm missing? Victoria's voice rose. I lost 7 years with her, Ethan. 7 years I can't get back. While you were teaching her to ride a bike and reading her bedtime stories, I was burying myself in work because I thought she was dead. That's not my fault. I didn't say it was. But you don't get to act like I'm the villain here for wanting to know my own daughter. They stared at each other across the small living room. The coffee maker beeped, breaking the tension. Ethan rubbed his face with both hands. This is a mess. Yeah. I don't want to fight you. I don't want to fight you either. Victoria set her mug down. But I'm not going to just walk away and pretend I didn't find her. I wouldn't ask you to. Ethan leaned back in his chair. But we need to be smart about this. For Sophie's sake. She's 7 years old. Her whole world is about to get turned upside down. What are you proposing? DNA test first. Confirm what we both already know. Then we figure out how to tell her, together. And after that, he trailed off. I don't know. We make it up as we go, I guess. Try not to screw her up too badly. Victoria almost smiled. That's not much of a plan. You got a better one? She didn't. Okay, Victoria said. We do it your way. DNA test, then we tell her together. But Ethan, I want to be part of her life, really part of it. Not just some stranger who sends birthday cards. I'm not promising anything until we see how she handles this. If it's too much for her, if it makes her unhappy, then we slow down. Her well-being comes first, non-negotiable. Agreed. Ethan extended his hand. Victoria shook it. His grip was firm, calloused from years of manual labor. Nothing like the soft handshake she got from executives and investors. It felt real. I'll set up the DNA test, Victoria said. I have doctors who can do it discreetly. Fine. But I want a copy of everything. No secrets. No secrets. They sat there for a moment in the small apartment that smelled like coffee and paint and life. Outside, sirens wailed. Someone was yelling on the street. Normal city sounds that Victoria never heard in her penthouse 40 floors up. "Can I ask you something?" Ethan said. "Sure." "Why didn't you fight harder 7 years ago when Elena told you the baby died? Why didn't you demand to see a body, go to the funeral, something?" Victoria flinched. It was the question she'd been asking herself since the moment she saw Sophie. "I was 23 and scared," she said quietly. "I just lost my parents. I was running a company full of people who thought I was too young, too inexperienced, too female to handle it. I was drowning, and when Elena told me my daughter was gone, part of me—" She stopped, swallowed hard. "Part of me was almost relieved, because it meant I didn't have to choose anymore between being a mother and being successful." That's honest. It's also the worst thing I've ever thought. Victoria's eyes were burning. She would not cry in front of this man. "I have regretted it every single day since." Ethan was quiet for a long moment. "For what it's worth, I don't think you're a terrible person. Just human." "That's generous of you." "Yeah, well, I've made my share of mistakes too." He stood up. "I should go get Sophie. She's probably driving her friend's parents crazy by now." Victoria stood too. "When can I see her again?" "Let's get the DNA results first. Then we'll talk." It wasn't what Victoria wanted to hear, but it was fair. She nodded. Ethan walked her to the door. "Victoria," she turned. "I meant what I said. We do this together, or we don't do it at all. I'm not letting you steamroll me just because you have money and lawyers." "I wouldn't expect you to." He smiled slightly. "Good, because you seem like the steamrolling type." Victoria found herself almost smiling back. "I've been called worse." She left the apartment and made her way back down the 4 flights of stairs. Her car was waiting outside, the driver reading something on his phone. As she slid into the back seat, Victoria looked up at the building. Lights were on in windows up and down the facade. People living their lives, eating dinner, watching TV, being families. Somewhere up there was a 7-year-old girl who had Victoria's eyes and Ethan's love and no idea that her entire world was about to change. Victoria pulled out her phone and sent a text to her head of security. "Need a comprehensive background check on Elena Marsh. Last known location, financial records, everything. Money is no object. If Elena had lied about Sophie dying, what else had she lied about? And where was she now?" Victoria was going to find out, because nobody stole her daughter and got away with it. But 3 days later, the DNA results came back. 99.9% probability that Sophie Cole was Victoria Hale's biological daughter. Ethan read the report twice, sitting at his kitchen table while Sophie was at school. He'd known what it would say, but seeing it in black and white made it real in a way that felt like a punch to the chest. She wasn't just his daughter anymore. She was Victoria's too. His phone rang. Victoria's number. "You got the results?" he said instead of hello. "Yes." They were both quiet. "So," Ethan said finally. "What now?" "Now we tell her, like we agreed." "When?" "Whenever you think she's ready. You know her better than I do." That was true. And also terrifying, because Ethan had no idea when a kid was ready to find out their entire origin story was a lie. "This weekend," he said. "Saturday afternoon. You can come here and we'll sit her down together." "Okay. Should I bring anything?" "Just yourself. And maybe—" He hesitated. "Maybe don't dress like you're going to a board meeting. She's 7. She's going to be scared enough without you looking like you're about to buy and sell her." Victoria laughed, short and sharp. "Point taken. Jeans it is." "Victoria?" "Yeah?" "This is going to change everything for her. You know that, right? She's going to have questions we can't answer. She's going to be angry, confused, probably scared. We can't fix this with money or good intentions." "I know." Victoria's voice was soft. "But we have to try anyway. Because the alternative is letting her grow up thinking I didn't want her, and I can't—" She broke off. "I can't let her think that." "Okay. Saturday at 2. Don't be late." "I won't." Ethan hung up and stared at the DNA report for a long time. He'd always known this day might come. That someday, somehow, Sophie's biological family might appear and turn their lives upside down. He'd had nightmares about it, but he'd never imagined it would be Victoria Hale. Billionaire CEO. Woman who could probably buy his entire neighborhood if she wanted to. Woman who looked at Sophie like she'd been given back something precious she'd thought was lost forever. Ethan folded the report and tucked it in a drawer. Then he pulled out his phone and called his lawyer, just in case. Because he trusted Victoria, mostly. But he also knew that people with power tended to use it, even when they didn't mean to. And Sophie was his daughter. He'd fight the whole damn world to keep her if he had to. Even a billionaire. Saturday morning arrived too fast. Ethan woke up at dawn even though he'd barely slept. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the radiator clank, and Mrs. Chen's television blaring through the wall. Somewhere down the hall, a baby was crying. Normal Saturday sounds in a building full of people living their normal Saturday lives. Except nothing about today was normal. He got up, made coffee, burned the first batch of pancakes because he wasn't paying attention. Made another batch. By the time Sophie shuffled out of her room at 8, rubbing her eyes and dragging her elephant behind her, Ethan had reorganized the kitchen cabinets twice and cleaned the bathroom grout with a toothbrush. "You're being weird," Sophie announced, climbing onto her chair. "I'm not being weird. You only clean stuff when you're worried about something." She poured syrup on her pancakes in a pattern that looked like a face. "Is it about that lady from the art show?" Ethan's hand froze on the coffee pot. "What makes you say that?" Sophie shrugged. "You've been different since then. Quiet, and you keep looking at me funny." Smart kid. Too smart sometimes. "She's coming over today," Ethan said, trying to keep his voice casual. "To talk. About some stuff." "What stuff?" "Grown-up stuff." "But it's about you too, so you'll be there." Sophie frowned. "I don't want to talk to her. She was mean." "She wasn't mean, sweetheart. She was just surprised." "About what?" Ethan opened his mouth, then closed it. Not yet. Victoria should be here for this conversation. They'd agreed. "You'll understand later," he said. "I promise. But Sophie, no matter what happens today, nothing changes between us. You're still my kid. I'm still your dad. That part doesn't change. Ever." Sophie studied him with those gray-green eyes that weren't really his. "You promise?" "I promise." She seemed satisfied with that and went back to drowning her pancakes in syrup. Ethan watched her and felt his chest get tight. 7 years. 7 years of this. Saturday morning pancakes and sticky fingers, and her asking him questions he didn't know how to answer. 7 years of being enough. Now he had to share her with someone who'd had her first. Someone who'd given her away and then grieved her loss and now wanted her back. Ethan didn't know how to do this. Didn't have a manual for explaining to your adopted daughter that her biological mother was alive and wanted to meet her, and also happened to be one of the richest women in the city. His phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. "Is noon too early? I can't wait anymore." He typed back. 2 p.m. Like we agreed. She needs time to process before. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, "Okay, I'm sorry, I'm nervous." "Me too," he wrote, then deleted it. Sent instead, "See you at 2. The hours crawled by like something dying. Sophie wanted to go to the park, so they went. She played on the swings while Ethan sat on a bench and watched her and tried not to think about how this might be one of the last normal days they'd have together. How after today, everything would be complicated in ways a 7-year-old shouldn't have to deal with. "Dad, push me higher!" Ethan got up and pushed her swing, watched her hair fly back, heard her laugh. Tried to memorize it. They got back to the apartment at 1:30. Sophie wanted to watch cartoons. Ethan let her, then retreated to his room and changed his shirt 3 times before settling on the first one he'd picked. This was stupid. What did it matter what he wore? Except it did matter, because Victoria would be here in 30 minutes, and they were about to blow up his daughter's world, and he needed to at least look like he had his shit together, even if he didn't. The buzzer rang at exactly 2 p.m. Ethan took a breath, pressed the button. "Come up." He opened the door and waited. Heard footsteps on the stairs, measured, careful. Then Victoria appeared on the landing. She'd taken his advice about the clothes. Jeans and a sweater, hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked younger like this, less like a CEO, more like a person. Her hands were clenched at her sides. "Hi," she said. Hi. They stood there awkwardly for a moment. Then Victoria glanced past him into the apartment. Is she watching TV? Come in. Victoria stepped inside. Sophie looked up from the couch, saw her, and immediately her expression shuddered. She pressed closer to her elephant. Hey, Sophie, Victoria said softly. Remember me? Sophie didn't answer. Ethan closed the door. Sophie, Ms. Hale is here to talk with us about something important. I need you to turn off the TV and come sit at the table, okay? I don't want to. I know, but this is important, kiddo, please. Sophie's bottom lip jutted out, but she clicked off the TV and trudged to the kitchen table, elephant tucked under one arm. She climbed into her usual chair and glared at Victoria. Ethan sat down next to Sophie. Victoria took the chair across from them, moving slowly, like she was approaching something that might bolt. Sophie, Ethan started, then stopped. How the hell was he supposed to do this? You know how sometimes we've talked about where you came from, about how I adopted you when you were a baby? Sophie nodded warily. And you know that means you had another mom before me, a birth mom. You said she couldn't take care of me. That's why you adopted me. That's right. Ethan's throat felt dry. But what I didn't know, what nobody knew, was who she was, or what happened to her. Sophie's eyes flicked to Victoria, then back to Ethan. Is that her? Ethan looked at Victoria. She was gripping the edge of the table so hard her knuckles were white. Yes, Ethan said. This is Victoria, and she's... The words stuck. He forced them out. She's your birth mother, Sophie. Silence. Sophie stared at him, then at Victoria, then back at him. No, she's not, Sophie said finally. Sweetheart. No, you're lying. My birth mom is gone. You said she couldn't take care of me, but you didn't say she was... Sophie gestured at Victoria. She's not my mom. You're my dad. I don't have a mom. Sophie, I know this is confusing. I don't want her here. Sophie's voice was rising. Make her leave. I don't want to talk to her. Victoria flinched like she'd been slapped. Sophie, I know you don't know me. Then why are you here? Sophie turned on her, and there was something fierce in her face that Ethan recognized from every time she'd stood up to a bully at school or refused to back down from something she thought was unfair. You didn't want me before. Why do you want me now? That's not... Victoria's voice cracked. I did want you. I've always wanted you. I thought you were... I was told you were gone, that you'd died. I didn't know you were alive until I saw you at the gallery. That's not true. People don't just lose babies. Sometimes they do. Sometimes people lie about things, and Victoria stopped, took a breath. I made a mistake 7 years ago. I let someone convince me to give you up for adoption because I was scared and young, and I didn't think I could take care of you the right way. But I regretted it. I tried to get you back, and that's when they told me you were gone. Sophie's eyes were filling with tears. But I wasn't gone. I was right here with Dad. I know. And I'm so glad you were. I'm glad he found you and took care of you and gave you a home. Victoria's own eyes were wet now. But I'm here now, Sophie, and I'd really like a chance to know you, if you'll let me. Why should I? Sophie's voice was small now, younger than 7. You didn't want me. I did. I do. Victoria stopped, swallowed hard. Can I show you something? She reached into her bag and pulled out a small photo album, slid it across the table. Sophie didn't touch it. What is it? She asked. Pictures. From when you were born. Victoria opened the album. I only got to hold you for a little while before they took you away, but I took pictures. See? This is you, maybe an hour old. Sophie leaned forward despite herself. Ethan looked too. The photo showed a tiny baby wrapped in a pink blanket, eyes closed, one small fist pressed against her cheek. And holding her was a younger Victoria, 23, exhausted, smiling through tears at the camera. That's me? Sophie whispered. That's you. Victoria turned the page. More photos. The baby sleeping. The baby with her eyes open, unfocused and blue. The baby with the silver bracelet on her wrist, too big, sliding around. I put that bracelet on you, Victoria said quietly. I had it made special, with your birthday engraved inside. I wanted you to have something from me, even if I couldn't keep you, even if you never knew who I was. Sophie touched the photo. Why did you give me away if you loved me? Because I was scared. Because I thought someone else could give you a better life than I could. Because I was 23 and alone and running a company I barely understood, and I didn't think I could be a good mom. Victoria's voice broke. I was wrong. I should have kept you. I should have fought harder, but I can't change that now. All I can do is tell you I'm sorry and that I've missed you every single day. Sophie was crying now, tears running down her face. Ethan put his arm around her shoulders. Why didn't you find me sooner? Sophie asked. I tried. I hired people to look for you, but they told me you were dead, and I believed them. I stopped looking. Victoria wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. That was my mistake. I should have kept looking. I should have known they were lying. Who was lying? The woman who arranged the adoption. She took you from the hospital and was supposed to give you to a family. But somewhere along the way, we don't know exactly what happened, but she left you in your dad's cab instead, and then she told me you died so I'd stop asking questions. Sophie looked at Ethan. Is that true? As far as we can tell, yeah. Ethan squeezed her shoulder gently. Someone left you in the back of my cab 7 years ago during a rainstorm. You were wrapped in a blanket wearing that bracelet. Nobody came back for you. The police couldn't find your family, so after a while I adopted you. But she's my family, Sophie pointed at Victoria. She is, biologically, but nobody knew that until now. Sophie was quiet for a long moment, turning this over in her head. Ethan could practically see her processing, trying to make sense of a situation that didn't make sense. So what happens now? Sophie asked finally. Ethan and Victoria looked at each other. That's up to you, Ethan said. Victoria wants to get to know you, spend time with you, but only if you want that too. And no matter what you decide, I'm still your dad. That doesn't change. But she's my mom. Birth mom, Ethan corrected gently. There's a difference. What difference? Being a parent isn't just about biology. It's about showing up, taking care of someone, being there when they need you. He looked at Victoria when he said it. She met his eyes steadily. Victoria's your birth mom. That's important. But I'm the one who's been your dad for 7 years. That's important too. Sophie wiped her nose on her sleeve. Can I think about it? Of course, Victoria said quickly. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. Do you have other kids? No, just you. Do you have a husband? No. A dog? Victoria almost smiled. No dog, but I like dogs. What kind of work do you do? I run a technology company. We make computer systems and software. Are you rich? Sophie, Ethan said, but Victoria waved him off. It's okay. Yes, I'm rich. Sophie considered this. Do you live in a big house? An apartment, but yes, it's big. Bigger than this? Much bigger. Sophie looked around their small apartment, then back at Victoria. Do you want me to come live with you? Ethan's entire body went tense. No, Victoria said firmly. This is your home. Your dad is here. Your school, your friends, everything you know. I would never ask you to leave that. Then what do you want? Victoria looked at Sophie with an expression that was equal parts hope and heartbreak. I want to know you. I want to hear about school and your art and what makes you laugh. I want to be part of your life if you'll let me. But I don't want to take you away from your dad. He's your family too. Sophie was quiet again. Then she said, Can I go to my room now? I want to think. Yeah, kiddo, go ahead. Sophie slid off her chair and trudged to her room, elephant dragging behind her. The door closed with a soft click. Ethan and Victoria sat at the table in silence. That went better than I expected, Victoria said finally. She didn't throw anything or tell you to leave, so yeah, I guess it did. She's handling this better than I am. Kids are resilient. Doesn't mean it's not hard for her. Victoria closed the photo album, ran her fingers over the cover. Thank you for letting me show her these. She deserved to see them. Did she? I'm the one who gave her up. Why does that earn me anything? Ethan studied her. She looked exhausted, wrung out. You didn't give her up because you didn't want her. You gave her up because you thought it was best for her. There's a difference. Is there? Because from where I'm sitting, the result is the same. I wasn't there. No. But you're here now. Victoria met his eyes. What if she decides she doesn't want me around? Then we respect that. And maybe in a few years she'll change her mind. Or maybe she won't, but that's her choice to make, not ours. I don't know if I can do that. Just walk away again. You won't be walking away. You'll be giving her space. It's different. Victoria laughed, bitter. You're very good at this. At what? Being reasonable when I want to scream. Yeah, well, I've had 7 years of practice at staying calm when things get hard. Comes with the parenting territory. They sat there for a while, not talking. Outside, someone was playing music too loud. A car alarm went off, then stopped. The building creaked and settled. Finally, Sophie's door opened. She came back out, climbed into her chair at the table. I decided, she announced. Ethan's heart kicked against his ribs. Yeah? I want to get to know her, but I need rules. Rules? Victoria echoed. Yeah, like, you can visit sometimes, but you have to ask Dad first. And you can't try to buy me stuff all the time just because you're rich. And you have to call me Sophie, not anything else weird. And she paused, thinking. And you have to be nice to Dad, because he's my family too. Ethan felt something in his chest loosen. Victoria was blinking fast, trying not to cry again. I can do all of that. Promise? I promise. Sophie nodded, satisfied. Okay, you can stay for dinner if you want. Dad's making spaghetti. But you have to help because that's the rule. If you eat here, you help cook. Victoria looked at Ethan, uncertain. He shrugged. She's right. House rules. You in? Yes, I'd like that. Fair warning, Ethan said as he got up to start pulling ingredients from the cabinets. I'm not fancy. It's jarred sauce and dried pasta. No truffle oil or whatever you're probably used to. I don't cook, Victoria admitted. At all. I usually order in or eat at restaurants. Sophie's eyes went wide. You don't know how to cook? Never learned. That's sad. Sophie, Ethan warned, but he was trying not to smile. It's okay, Victoria said. She's not wrong. So they cooked dinner together in Ethan's tiny kitchen that barely fit 3 people. Victoria followed Sophie's instructions on how to tear lettuce for the salad, while Ethan boiled water and heated sauce. Sophie narrated the entire process like she was hosting a cooking show, explaining why you had to salt the pasta water and how to know when the noodles were ready. Victoria was terrible at it. She cut the tomatoes too thick and nearly dropped the salad bowl twice. But she was trying, and Sophie seemed to appreciate that. When they sat down to eat, Sophie announced that Victoria was sitting in the wrong chair. That's Dad's chair. You have to sit over there. Victoria moved without arguing. Dinner was chaotic. Sophie talked non-stop about school and her art class, and a boy named Marcus who kept pulling her hair at recess. Victoria asked questions and actually listened to the answers. Ethan watched them together and felt something strange settling in his chest. Not quite hope, but not quite fear either. Something in between. After dinner, Sophie insisted Victoria had to help with dishes because that was another house rule. You wash, I'll dry, Sophie instructed. I don't know how to wash dishes. Sophie stared at her. You put soap on the sponge and scrub them. It's not hard. Right, of course. Ethan leaned against the counter and watched Victoria Hale, billionaire CEO, scrub spaghetti sauce off plates under the critical supervision of a 7-year-old. She got soap everywhere, used too much water, didn't rinse thoroughly enough. Sophie corrected her at every step. You're really bad at this, Sophie observed. I'm aware. It's okay. You'll get better with practice. When the dishes were done, and Sophie had been convinced to take a bath, Victoria and Ethan stood in the hallway outside the bathroom door. I should go, Victoria said quietly. Probably. Thank you. For today. For letting me... She stopped. Just thank you. She's your daughter too. You had a right to meet her. Did I? After giving her up? Ethan looked at her. Really looked at her. She was trying so hard to hold it together, but he could see the cracks. Yeah, he said. You did. And for what it's worth, I think you handled that pretty well. I didn't know what I was doing. Welcome to parenting. Nobody does. Victoria almost smiled. She's amazing, you know. You did a good job with her. Thanks. I mean it. She's kind and smart, and she doesn't take any shit from anyone. That's all you. She gets the stubborn from you, though. I can already tell. This time, Victoria did smile. Probably. From the bathroom, Sophie yelled, "Dad, I need my elephant." "1 second," Ethan called back. He looked at Victoria. "You want to come back tomorrow? Sophie has art class in the morning, but we're free after lunch." "Really?" "Yeah, I mean, if you want to. We usually go to the park on Sundays. Nothing fancy, but you're welcome to join." Victoria's eyes were bright. "I'd like that." "Okay. Noon. Don't be late." "I won't." She left, and Ethan stood in the hallway for a moment, processing what had just happened. Then Sophie yelled again, and he grabbed the elephant from her room and brought it to her. Later, after Sophie was in bed, Ethan sat on the couch with a beer and stared at nothing. His phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. "Thank you again for everything. I know this isn't easy for you." He stared at the message for a long time before typing back. "It's not easy for any of us, but we'll figure it out." "Yes, we will." Ethan set the phone down and finished his beer. Tomorrow, Victoria would come back, and the day after that probably, and they'd figure out what this new version of their lives looked like. He just hoped they didn't screw Sophie up too badly in the process. The next few weeks fell into a strange rhythm. Victoria came over 3 or 4 times a week, sometimes for dinner, sometimes just to hang out. She brought takeout because Ethan refused to let her cook after the spaghetti incident. She sat at their kitchen table and helped Sophie with homework, even though she'd never done long division the way they taught it now, and had to look up videos on her phone to figure it out. Sophie was wary at first, testing boundaries. She'd make pronouncements like, "You can't tell me what to do," and "You're not my real mom," whenever Victoria suggested something she didn't want to do. Victoria took it without fighting back. Just said, "You're right, I'm not, but I still think you should wear a coat because it's cold outside." Gradually, Sophie softened. She started asking Victoria questions. What was it like being rich? Did she have a fancy car? Had she ever met anyone famous? Victoria answered honestly, and when Sophie asked why she didn't smile in any of the photos online, Victoria said, "Because most of the time I'm not happy, but I'm trying to change that." "Why aren't you happy? You have everything." "Having things isn't the same as being happy." Sophie considered this. "Dad doesn't have things, but he's happy." "Your dad is smarter than I am." Ethan, who was reading the paper at the table, snorted. "I'm really not." "Yes, you are," Victoria said. "You figured out what matters. I'm still working on it." One night, Sophie asked if she could see where Victoria lived. Ethan and Victoria exchanged glances. "You sure?" Ethan asked. "It's pretty different from here." "I want to see." So the following Saturday, Victoria's driver picked them up. Sophie pressed her face to the window during the entire ride, watching the city change around them. The buildings got taller, cleaner, shinier. The people on the streets wore better clothes. Victoria's building had a doorman who called her Ms. Hale and smiled at Sophie. The elevator was mirrored and silent. Sophie watched the floor numbers climb 10, 20, 30, 40. The penthouse was on the 42nd floor. When Victoria unlocked the door and let them inside, Sophie stood in the entryway and stared. "This is where you live?" she breathed. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the entire city. The furniture looked like it belonged in a museum. The kitchen was all marble and stainless steel, and appliances Sophie couldn't name. "Yeah," Victoria said, and she sounded almost embarrassed. "It's too big for one person, I know." Sophie walked slowly through the rooms, touching things gently, like she was afraid they'd break. She found the guest bedroom and announced it was bigger than their entire apartment. She found the library and said, "Have you read all these books?" "Most of them." "That's so many books." In the living room, Sophie stopped in front of a photo on the side table. Victoria as a teenager, standing between 2 people who had her eyes. "Who are they?" Sophie asked. "My parents. They died when I was 19. "Oh." Sophie looked up at her. "I'm sorry. Me too." "Is that why you're alone? Because they died?" Victoria's throat felt tight. "Partly, and partly because I pushed everyone else away." "Why?" "Because it felt safer than letting people close and losing them." Sophie thought about this. "But you're not alone anymore. You have me and Dad." Victoria had to turn away so Sophie wouldn't see her eyes filling. "Yeah, I do." They ordered pizza because Victoria's kitchen had never actually been used and she didn't even have plates. Sophie thought this was hilarious. They ate on the couch while Sophie channel surfed and provided running commentary on everything they passed. When it started getting late, Ethan said they should probably head home. Sophie hugged Victoria goodbye at the door. It was quick, awkward, the first time she'd initiated physical contact. Then she pulled back and said, "Your apartment is nice, but I like ours better." "Why's that?" "Because it feels like people live there." After they left, Victoria stood in her enormous empty apartment and looked around at all the expensive things that had never made her happy. Sophie was right. This wasn't a home. It was just a place to sleep between meetings. She called her realtor the next day. Ethan found out about it by accident 2 weeks later when Sophie came home from school, chattering about how Victoria had asked if they'd ever thought about moving to a different apartment. "She did what?" Ethan asked carefully. "She said there's a place in our neighborhood, 3 bedrooms, and it has a park right across the street, and it's really close to my school, and she wants to know if we want to see it." Ethan called Victoria immediately. "You can't buy us an apartment," he said without preamble. "I'm not buying you an apartment. I'm buying myself an apartment." "In my neighborhood." "In Sophie's neighborhood, yes. Is that a problem?" "Victoria, look, I'm not trying to overstep, but I'm tired of that penthouse. It's cold and empty, and I hate it there. I want to be closer to Sophie, closer to both of you. And there's a unit in the building next to yours. 3 bedrooms, great light, totally reasonable price." "How reasonable are we talking?" Victoria was quiet. "How much, Victoria?" "That's not important." "It is to me. I don't want you throwing money around like..." "Like what? Like I care about my daughter and want to be near her?" Victoria's voice sharpened. "I have money, Ethan, more than I'll ever need. Why shouldn't I use it to make our lives easier?" "Because Sophie needs to understand that you can't buy relationships, that showing up matters more than how much you spend. I know that. I'm not trying to buy anything. I just want..." She stopped. "I want to be part of this, really part of it, not just a visitor who comes over for dinner. I want to be able to walk over when Sophie has a bad dream. I want to run into you guys at the grocery store. I want normal." Ethan was quiet for a long moment. "Show me the apartment," he said finally. It was nice. Really nice. Bigger than his place, newer, with actual closets and a dishwasher and windows that didn't stick. 3 bedrooms, like Victoria said, one for her, one for an office, one for Sophie. "For when she visits," Victoria explained. "If she wants to, sometimes. No pressure." Sophie loved it immediately. She ran from room to room, announcing which one should be hers, and where they should put furniture, and how the view was so much better than from Ethan's place. Ethan pulled Victoria aside. "You're really doing this. If it's okay with you, I won't buy it if you don't want me to. It's your money. But it affects your life and Sophie's, so I'm asking." Ethan looked at her. She was serious, actually waiting for his permission. "Okay," he said. "Buy the apartment. But Victoria, we're not moving in with you. Sophie and I stay where we are." "I know, I wouldn't ask you to. And you can't spoil her. No crazy expensive gifts or private schools or..." "I know. She already told me the rules, remember? Just making sure we're clear." Victoria smiled. "We're clear." She bought the apartment, moved in 3 weeks later with minimal furniture because she didn't actually own that much that wasn't tied to the penthouse. Sophie helped her pick out a couch and declared Victoria's taste too boring. "You need color," Sophie insisted, "and pictures, and stuff that makes it feel like home." So they went shopping, Sophie, Victoria, and reluctantly Ethan, and filled the apartment with things Sophie approved of. Bright throw pillows, plants that Victoria would probably kill, photos in frames. The first night Victoria slept there, Sophie insisted on staying over. "To make sure you're not scared," she explained seriously. Ethan hesitated, but Victoria looked so hopeful that he agreed. "One night, and you brush your teeth before bed." They walked Sophie over after dinner. She brought her elephant in her pajamas and a list of bedtime story requirements. "Dad reads 3 books minimum," she informed Victoria, "and you have to do voices." "I don't know if I'm good at voices." "You can practice." Ethan left them to it and went back to his apartment, sat on the couch alone for the first time in weeks, and didn't know what to do with himself. His phone buzzed around 9. A video from Victoria. He opened it. Sophie in her pajamas, tucked into bed in Victoria's spare room, smiling at the camera. Victoria's voice off screen. "Say goodnight to your dad." "Good night, Dad. Victoria did the voices wrong, but I'm teaching her. The video cut off. Ethan watched it 3 more times. The next morning, Sophie came crashing through his door at 7 a.m., elephant tucked under one arm. Victoria doesn't have any food, she announced. We had to eat crackers for breakfast. That's because she doesn't know how to shop for groceries yet, Ethan said, pulling her in for a hug. Was it fun? Yeah. She let me pick what movie we watched, and she didn't even fall asleep during it. And her bed is really big. I got lost in it. Did you sleep okay? Mostly. I woke up once and she was still awake reading. She said she doesn't sleep much. Ethan filed that information away. Made a mental note to ask Victoria about it later. Over the next few weeks, something shifted. Victoria became a fixture in their lives. Not a visitor, not a stranger, just someone who was there. She learned Sophie's schedule, started showing up at school pickup sometimes. The other parents stared. Everyone knew who Victoria Hale was. Sophie didn't seem to care. She'd run over, grab Victoria's hand, and drag her to see whatever art project was hanging in the hallway. One of the other moms, Sarah, who Ethan had been friendly with for years, cornered him one afternoon. So that's really Victoria Hale. The Victoria Hale. Yeah. And she's Sophie's birth mother. Long story. Sarah looked at him carefully. You doing okay with all this? Honestly, I don't know. It's complicated. She seems nice for a billionaire. Ethan laughed. She's trying. Sophie seems happy. That's what matters, right? Right. But that night, lying in bed, Ethan wondered if it was enough. Sophie was happy now. But what happened when Victoria got bored? When the novelty wore off and she went back to her CEO life and her board meetings and her billion-dollar deals? What happened to Sophie then? He didn't have an answer. The call came at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. Ethan jerked awake to his phone vibrating on the nightstand, heart already pounding because nothing good ever happened at 2 a.m. He grabbed it without looking at the screen. Hello? Ethan. Victoria's voice was tight, controlled in a way that meant she was barely holding it together. I need you to come to the office now. He sat up, suddenly completely awake. What's wrong? Is Sophie? Sophie's fine. She's asleep. But there's been something happened with the company, a problem. And I need... She stopped. Can you just come? Please? Ethan was already pulling on jeans. What's the address? She gave it to him. He checked on Sophie, still asleep, elephant clutched to her chest, then left a note on the kitchen table in case she woke up and called Mrs. Chen from down the hall to listen for her. The Hale Technologies building was downtown, all glass and steel reaching into the night sky. Security let him up after Victoria called down. The elevator ride to the 35th floor felt like it took forever. Victoria was waiting when the doors opened. She looked like hell, hair falling out of its ponytail, makeup smudged under her eyes, still wearing the same clothes she'd had on at dinner 12 hours ago. What happened? Ethan asked. Come with me. She led him through empty corridors to a conference room where half a dozen people sat around a table covered in laptops and papers and cold coffee. They all looked up when Ethan walked in, expressions ranging from confusion to exhaustion. Everyone, this is Ethan Cole, Victoria said. Ethan, this is my senior team. We have a situation. A woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and sharper suit spoke up. With all due respect, Ms. Hale, why is a civilian here? This is a company crisis. Because I trust him, Victoria said flatly. And right now, I don't trust anyone else. Keep talking, David. A tired-looking man in his 30s pulled up something on his laptop. The autonomous vehicle demonstration is scheduled for Friday. Every major investor, half the tech press, and 3 senators are going to be there. It's supposed to be our biggest launch in 5 years. Okay, Ethan said slowly. So what's the problem? The problem, Victoria said, is that someone sabotaged the system. If we run that demonstration, the vehicles are going to fail, publicly, catastrophically, and Hale Technologies will be finished. Ethan stared at her. How do you know? Because one of our engineers found the code tonight. Someone's been planting failures in the navigation system for weeks. Small enough that they wouldn't show up in standard testing, but big enough that when we put 50 vehicles on the street at once... She didn't finish. Who did it? Ethan asked. We don't know yet. The code was inserted from multiple access points. Whoever did this knew our security systems inside and out. The sharp-eyed woman, her nameplate said Rebecca Chen, COO, spoke again. We need to cancel the demonstration. Issue a statement about technical delays, push the launch back 6 months. That'll tank our stock price, someone else said. Investors are already nervous after the last earnings report. Better than killing someone when a vehicle runs a red light because the navigation system thinks it's green. Voices started talking over each other. Ethan watched Victoria's face get tighter and tighter. Enough, she said quietly, but everyone stopped talking. We're not canceling, we're fixing it. Ms. Hale, with respect, we have 72 hours. Then we work for 72 hours. David, I want every line of code in that system reviewed. Rebecca, pull security footage from the past 2 months. Find out who had access to the servers and when. Martin, she pointed at a younger guy in a hoodie. I want you to build a clean version of the navigation system from scratch. Use the backup from before any of this started. That's going to take however long it takes. We have 3 days. Make it work. The room cleared out slowly, people grabbing laptops and phones and muttering about coffee. Soon, it was just Ethan and Victoria. She sat down heavily in one of the conference room chairs and put her head in her hands. Hey, Ethan said quietly. You okay? No, not even a little bit. He pulled out the chair next to her and sat down. Talk to me. If this demonstration fails, the company fails. I've got investors breathing down my neck, a board that already thinks I'm too young to be CEO, and apparently someone on my own team trying to destroy everything I've built. Her voice cracked. I don't know what I'm doing, Ethan. I'm 30 years old and I'm in over my head and I'm going to lose everything. You're not going to lose everything. You don't know that. No. But I know you don't give up when things get hard. You could have walked away from Sophie when this got complicated. You didn't. Victoria looked up at him. Her eyes were red. That's different. How? Because Sophie matters. She's my daughter. This is just... She gestured vaguely. Money, business, it shouldn't matter as much. But it does. Because you built it. Because it's yours. Ethan leaned back in his chair. You called me at 2 a.m. Why? I don't know. I needed someone who wasn't going to tell me what I wanted to hear. Someone who'd be honest. Okay. Honest? You look like you haven't slept in a week. You're running on caffeine and anxiety, and you're about to make decisions that affect hundreds of people's jobs. That's a lot. Thanks. Very helpful. I'm not done. You're also one of the smartest people I've ever met. You're stubborn as hell, and you don't back down from a fight. If anyone can fix this, it's you. But you can't do it alone. I have a team. I don't mean them. I mean you need to not be here for the next 12 hours. You need to sleep, eat something that isn't vending machine food, and clear your head. Victoria shook her head. I can't leave. There's too much. Your team knows what they're doing. You said it yourself. They're the best. Let them work while you recharge. Otherwise, you're going to burn out before Friday. And then what good are you? She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. I hate that you're right. Yeah, I get that a lot. Victoria stood up slowly, like her bones hurt. Will you stay? Just until I get back? I don't want to leave them completely unsupervised. I don't know anything about code or navigation systems. You know people, and right now that's what I need. Someone to make sure they're eating, taking breaks, not killing each other. She managed a weak smile. You're good at that. Taking care of people. Ethan thought about Sophie asleep in his apartment, about the note he'd left, about work in the morning at the garage. Okay, he said. But you owe me breakfast. Deal. Victoria left, and Ethan found himself alone in a conference room full of expensive technology he didn't understand in a building full of people who probably thought he didn't belong there. He went looking for the break room. By the time the sun came up, Ethan had learned 3 things about tech workers in crisis mode. 1, they survived almost entirely on coffee and snack foods. 2, they forgot to eat unless someone reminded them. 3, they were actually kind of funny when they got tired enough. He'd made a food run around 4 a.m., took Victoria's corporate card without asking, and came back with breakfast sandwiches, fruit, actual food. The team had looked at him like he'd brought gold. David, the tired engineer, had explained the sabotage code in terms Ethan actually understood. Basically, someone told the car's brain that red lights are green and green lights are red, but only sometimes, only when specific conditions are met. So the car thinks it's safe to go when it's not. Exactly. And because it's conditional, our standard test didn't catch it. The conditions only trigger when there are multiple vehicles communicating with each other. Like at the demonstration. Ethan had helped where he could, which mostly meant keeping people fed and reminding them to stretch their legs every few hours. Martin, the young programmer, had been working for 8 hours straight when Ethan physically unplugged his laptop. "Take a walk," Ethan said. "Around the block, 15 minutes. "I can't. I'm in the middle of... The code will still be there when you get back. Your brain won't be functional if you don't take a break." Martin had grumbled, but gone. Around noon, Victoria came back. She looked better, showered, changed, actually conscious. She stopped in the doorway of the conference room and stared. The table was covered in food containers and water bottles. Someone had drawn a flowchart on the whiteboard that Ethan didn't understand, but that seemed important. Rebecca was on the phone with security, sounding pissed. David was actually smiling at something on his screen. "What did you do?" Victoria asked. "Fed them. Made them take breaks. Listened to them complain." Ethan shrugged. "Nothing fancy. They look human? Yeah. Turns out treating people like people helps them work better. Revolutionary concept." Victoria walked over to David. "How's the code looking?" "Good. Really good, actually. We're isolating all the compromised sections and replacing them with clean versions. Should be done by tonight." "And the security footage?" Rebecca looked up. "Still reviewing, but I've got a short list of people who had server access during the relevant time frames. I'll have names by tomorrow." Victoria nodded slowly. Then she looked at Ethan. "Can we talk?" "My office?" They took the elevator up 2 more floors to an office that was all windows and minimalist furniture. Victoria closed the door behind them and leaned against it. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For this. For staying. For, I don't know, caring. Your team cares. They're working their asses off to fix this." "Because it's their job. You're here because I asked you to be." "Yeah, well, that's what friends do." Victoria's expression shifted. "Are we friends?" Ethan thought about it. 3 months ago, this woman had been a stranger. Then she'd become Sophie's biological mother. Then a neighbor. Now, "Yeah," he said. "I think we are." Something in Victoria's face softened. "I've never been very good at that. Friends. You're doing fine." "Am I?" "Because most of the time I feel like I'm faking it. Like I'm following a script for how normal people interact and hoping nobody notices I don't actually know what I'm doing." Ethan studied her. She looked small somehow, despite being tall. Uncertain in a way he'd never seen her before. "You want to know what I think?" he asked. "Always. I think you spent so long building walls to protect yourself that you forgot how to let people in. But you're learning. Sophie's teaching you, whether you realize it or not." Victoria smiled, sad. "She's 7. She shouldn't have to teach me how to be human." "Kids teach us stuff all the time. That's kind of the point." "Is it?" "Yeah, Sophie taught me that it's okay to be scared as long as you don't let it stop you. She taught me that love doesn't have to be complicated, and she's teaching you..." He paused. "She's teaching you that you're allowed to need people, that you don't have to do everything alone." Victoria's eyes were bright again. "When did you get so wise?" "I'm not wise. I'm just a mechanic who's been winging it for 7 years." "You're more than that." Before Ethan could respond, his phone rang. Sophie's school. He answered immediately. "Hello? Mr. Cole? This is Principal Martinez. Sophie's fine, but there was an incident at lunch. Can you come pick her up?" Ethan's stomach dropped. "What kind of incident?" "She got into a fight with another student. She's not hurt, but we need to discuss this in person. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He hung up. Victoria was already grabbing her keys. "I'll drive," she said. "It's faster." They made it to the school in 15 minutes. Sophie was sitting in the principal's office, arms crossed, lip bleeding slightly. When she saw Ethan, she burst into tears. He crouched down in front of her. Hey, it's okay. What happened?" "Marcus said," Sophie hiccuped. "He said you weren't my real dad, that my real mom didn't want me and that's why she gave me away, so I hit him." Ethan felt something hot and angry flare in his chest. He looked at Principal Martinez. "Where's the other kid?" "Being talked to by his parents in another office. Mr. Cole, I understand Sophie was provoked, but we have a zero-tolerance policy for violence. He was bullying her about her family situation. That's not provocation, that's harassment. Be that as it may, Victoria stepped forward. What consequences is the other child facing? Principal Martinez blinked at her. I'm sorry, who are you? Victoria Hale, Sophie's mother. The principal's face went through several emotions very quickly. I wasn't aware Sophie had, that is, we didn't have you on file as, that's because it's complicated. But the question stands. What happens to the child who was bullying Sophie about her family? Well, we'll have a conversation with him about appropriate behavior. A conversation while Sophie faces suspension for defending herself. Ms. Hale, our policy is very clear. Then maybe your policy needs to be reconsidered, because right now it looks like you're punishing the victim and giving the bully a talking to. Victoria's voice was cold, sharp, the CEO voice. I suggest you think very carefully about how you want to proceed here. Principal Martinez looked between Victoria and Ethan and Sophie. I'll need to consult with the superintendent. Perhaps we can handle this with detention for both students instead of suspension. Or you could handle this by actually addressing the bullying instead of pretending both kids are equally at fault, Ethan said. But sure, detention, whatever keeps her in school. They walked out with Sophie between them. She was still crying, quieter now. I'm sorry, she whispered. I know I'm not supposed to hit people, but he was being mean and I got so mad. I know, kiddo. Ethan squeezed her hand. We'll talk about it at home. But for the record, I'm glad you stood up for yourself, even if hitting wasn't the best way to do it. Victoria's car was waiting. Sophie climbed into the back seat and Victoria and Ethan stood by the driver's door. Thank you, Ethan said quietly, for backing her up in there. That principal was being ridiculous. Sophie was defending herself. Still, you didn't have to go all corporate on her. Victoria smiled slightly. I've been wanting to use that voice on someone all week. Felt good. They drove back to the apartment. Sophie was quiet the whole way, picking at her thumbnail the way she did when she was anxious. Inside, Ethan made hot chocolate while Victoria sat at the table with Sophie. Can I ask you something? Victoria said gently. Sophie nodded. Why did what Marcus said make you so angry? Because it's not true. Dad is my real dad. He's been my dad since I was a baby. And you? Sophie looked up at her. You didn't want to give me away. That lady lied to you, so Marcus was wrong about everything. Victoria's throat worked. He was. But Sophie, even if I had chosen to give you up, that wouldn't make Ethan any less your real dad. Biology doesn't determine family. Love does. That's what Dad always says. Your dad is a smart man. Sophie was quiet for a moment. Then, are you mad at me for hitting Marcus? No, I'm proud of you for defending your family, but I also think there might be better ways to handle it next time. Like what? Like telling the teacher, or walking away, or using your words instead of your fists. Victoria paused. I know it's hard. When people say things that hurt, the first instinct is to hurt them back. But you're better than that. How do you know? Because I've seen you with your dad, with your friends, with me. You're kind, Sophie. That's rare. Don't lose it just because some kid doesn't know how to behave. Sophie thought about this while Ethan brought over the hot chocolate. I'll try, she said finally. But if he says it again, I'm telling the teacher, and then maybe hitting him. Sophie, Ethan warned, but Victoria was smiling. Fair enough, Victoria said. Later, after Sophie was parked in front of the TV with her hot chocolate and elephant, Victoria and Ethan stood in the kitchen. You were good with her, Ethan said. I'm trying. Half the time I don't know what I'm doing. That's most of parenting, making it up as you go and hoping you don't screw them up too badly. Victoria's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and sighed. I need to get back to the office. Crisis isn't going to solve itself. You going to be okay? Ask me again in 72 hours. She left and Ethan sat down next to Sophie on the couch. She leaned against him. Is Victoria coming back? She asked. Yeah, she always comes back. Good. I like when she's here. Yeah? Even though she doesn't know how to cook or wash dishes? She's learning. You taught her. Sophie looked up at him. Do you like when she's here? Ethan thought about Victoria at 2 a.m., calling him because she needed help. Victoria going full CEO on the principal. Victoria sitting at their table telling Sophie she was proud of her. Yeah, he admitted. I do. Sophie smiled and went back to her cartoon. The next 2 days blurred together. Victoria barely left her office except to sleep a few hours at her apartment. Ethan juggled work at the garage with picking Sophie up from school and checking in with Victoria's team to make sure they were still functioning. Thursday night, Victoria showed up at Ethan's apartment at 11 p.m. She looked dead on her feet. "Sophie's asleep," Ethan said, letting her in. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. Everything's fixed. The code is clean. The security team identified the saboteur, one of our contractors with a grudge and a gambling debt, and the demonstration is back on track." She sat down on the couch like her legs had given out. "We did it." "That's good. So why do you look miserable?" "Because I just fired 15 people." Ethan sat down next to her. "Why?" "Because they knew about the sabotage and didn't report it. Or they should have caught it and didn't. Or they were just in the way." Victoria put her head in her hands. "I hate this part. The part where I have to be the bad guy." "You're protecting your company, your employees. That's not being the bad guy." "Isn't it? Those people have families, mortgages, and I just..." She made a cutting gesture. "Gone." "Did they deserve to be fired?" Victoria was quiet. "Yes." "Then you made the right call. Doesn't mean it feels good." "No, it doesn't." She looked at him. "How do you do it? How do you make hard decisions and not hate yourself?" "Who says I don't? I second-guess myself constantly. Every choice I make with Sophie, every time I have to tell her no or set a boundary or punish her for something, I wonder if I'm doing it right." "But you keep doing it anyway." "Because I have to. That's parenthood. That's life. You make the best call you can with the information you have, and then you live with it." Victoria leaned back against the couch. "I'm so tired, Ethan." "I know. Not just physically. Tired of being the person everyone expects me to be. Tired of having all the answers. Tired of..." She stopped. "Being alone?" She looked at him, and something in her expression shifted. "Yeah, that." They sat there in this dim apartment, city sounds drifting through the window. The radiator clanked. Somewhere a dog barked. "You're not alone anymore," Ethan said quietly. "You know that, right? You've got Sophie. You've got..." He hesitated. "You've got me. If you want." "What does that mean?" "It means you can call me at 2 a.m. when your company's falling apart. It means you can show up here when you're tired and just sit. It means you're part of this now, whatever this is. Family, I guess. The weird kind that doesn't make sense on paper but works anyway." Victoria's eyes were bright in the darkness. "I don't know how to be part of a family. I barely remember what that was like before my parents died. So we'll figure it out together. Me, you, Sophie. Make it up as we go." "That's a terrible plan." "Yeah, but it's all I've got." Victoria laughed, soft and tired. Then she leaned her head on his shoulder. Ethan froze for a second, then relaxed. Let her stay there. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For not giving up on me, even when I'm difficult." "You're not that difficult." "Liar." They sat like that until Victoria's breathing evened out, and Ethan realized she'd fallen asleep. He didn't move. Didn't want to wake her. Eventually he dozed off too, and when he woke up a few hours later to the sound of Sophie padding out of her room, Victoria was gone. There was a blanket draped over him that hadn't been there before, and a note on the coffee table. "Thank you for last night, and for everything. The demonstration is at noon today. Will you and Sophie come? I want you there. V." Ethan looked at the note for a long time. Then he went to wake up Sophie and tell her they were going to watch Victoria's company prove everyone wrong. The demonstration was supposed to start at noon, but by 11:30, the tech park was already packed. News vans lined the streets, cameras pointing at the track where 50 autonomous vehicles sat waiting. Investors clustered in small groups, checking their phones and looking nervous. Senators posed for photos. The whole thing had the energy of something about to either take off or spectacularly crash. Sophie pressed her face against the car window as Victoria's driver pulled into the VIP lot. "There's so many people." "Yeah," Ethan said, feeling out of place in jeans and his one decent jacket. "This is a big deal." "Is Victoria nervous?" "Probably, but she won't show it." They'd barely gotten out of the car when Rebecca appeared, looking harried. "Mr. Cole, Sophie, thank you for coming. Miss Hale is backstage. She wanted me to bring you to the VIP section." The VIP section turned out to be a covered platform with chairs and a clear view of the track. Sophie's eyes went wide at the spread of food laid out on tables along the back. "Can I have a cookie?" she whispered. "After the demonstration, and just one." "Two? We'll see." They sat down just as Victoria took the stage. She'd traded her usual CEO uniform for something slightly more approachable, still professional, but warmer somehow. Her hair was down. She looked young and confident and completely in control. Ethan wondered if anyone else could see the tightness around her eyes, the way her hands gripped the podium just a little too hard. "Thank you all for being here," Victoria said, her voice carrying across the crowd. 3 years ago, Hale Technologies committed to making autonomous vehicles not just possible, but safe, reliable, revolutionary. Today, we're going to show you the future of transportation. The crowd applauded. Cameras flashed. Sophie leaned over to Ethan. "She looks different up there." "What do you mean?" "Bigger. Like she's somebody important." "She is somebody important." "I know, but usually she's just Victoria. The one who can't cook and doesn't know how to wash dishes, right?" Ethan smiled. "Yeah, but she's both. That's the thing about people. They can be more than one thing at the same time." Sophie thought about this while Victoria continued her speech, talking about safety features and navigation systems and things Ethan only half understood. What he did understand was that this mattered, not just for the company, but for Victoria. This was her proving something, to the investors, to the board, to herself. "And now," Victoria said, "I'd like to turn things over to our head engineer, David Morrison, who'll walk you through the demonstration." David took the microphone, looking nervous but determined. He explained the route the vehicles would take, the various obstacles and traffic patterns they'd navigate, the safety protocols in place. Then the vehicles started moving. 50 autonomous cars pulling out of their positions in perfect synchronization. No drivers. Just code and sensors and the navigation system that Victoria's team had spent the last 72 hours rebuilding from scratch. The crowd went silent, watching. The vehicles moved through the course flawlessly. Stop signs, traffic lights, pedestrian crossings, merges, lane changes. Everything smooth, coordinated, exactly as designed. Ethan found himself holding his breath. Beside him, Sophie was gripping her elephant tightly. "They're doing good, right?" "Yeah, kiddo, they're doing great." 20 minutes into the demonstration, one of the test vehicles approached a complex intersection where 3 other vehicles were already navigating a 4-way stop. This was the critical moment, the exact scenario where the sabotaged code would have failed catastrophically. The vehicle slowed, stopped, waited its turn, proceeded through the intersection smoothly. Ethan heard someone behind him exhale in relief. The demonstration continued without incident. Every vehicle completed the course. Every safety protocol worked exactly as intended. By the time the last car returned to its starting position, the crowd was applauding. Victoria was back at the podium, taking questions from reporters. She handled them smoothly, confidently. When someone asked about the rumored security issues that had delayed testing, she didn't flinch. "We take security very seriously at Hale Technologies," she said. "We discovered and addressed a vulnerability in our systems, which is exactly what our protocols are designed to do. The safety of our technology is our top priority, and we won't launch anything until we're absolutely certain it's ready." More questions, more answers. Then Victoria wrapped it up, and the crowd started dispersing. Rebecca appeared at Ethan's elbow again. "Ms. Hale would like you and Sophie to meet her in the operations center. I'll show you the way." They followed her through the crowd to a building at the edge of the tech park. Inside was controlled chaos, engineers at computers, people on phones, displays showing data Ethan couldn't interpret. Victoria was in the center of it all, talking to David and a group of investors. When she saw Sophie, her face transformed, the CEO mask dropped, and she was just Victoria again. "You came," she said, walking over. "Told you we would," Ethan said. "That was impressive." "It worked. I still can't believe it actually worked." "I can. Your team is good." "They are." Victoria crouched down to Sophie's level. "What did you think?" "The cars were cool. Can I ride in one?" "Maybe someday, when they're approved for public use, but not yet." "That's okay. I liked watching." Sophie paused. "You were really good up there. on the stage. Victoria smiled. Thank you. That means a lot. One of the investors called Victoria's name, and she straightened up with visible reluctance. I have to go handle this, but there's a reception in an hour. You're both invited if you want to stay. Ethan glanced at Sophie, who was already eyeing the exit. A room full of rich people talking about technology was not going to hold a 7-year-old's attention for long. I think we're going to head out, he said. Let you do your thing, but Victoria, you did good today. Something in her expression softened. I couldn't have done it without you. Yeah, you could have, but I'm glad I could help. Victoria looked like she wanted to say something else, but another investor was approaching. She squeezed Sophie's shoulder, gave Ethan a look he couldn't quite read, and went back to work. They made it halfway to the exit before Sophie tugged on Ethan's hand. Dad? Yeah? Are you and Victoria friends or something else? Ethan stopped walking. What do you mean, something else? I don't know, you look at each other weird sometimes, like how Tommy's mom and her boyfriend look at each other. We're friends, Sophie, that's all. Okay, but if you wanted to be something else, that would be okay too. I like Victoria. I know you do, kiddo. And she likes you, I can tell. Ethan didn't know what to say to that, so he just ruffled her hair and changed the subject. But on the drive home, he thought about it, about Victoria falling asleep on his shoulder, about the way she'd looked at him when she said she couldn't have done this without him, about the fact that somewhere along the way, she'd stopped being just Sophie's birth mother and started being someone he looked forward to seeing. That was complicated. That was messy. That was a terrible idea for about 100 different reasons. But Sophie was right. He did look at Victoria differently now, and he was pretty sure she looked at him the same way. The crisis wasn't over. 3 days after the demonstration, Victoria's head of security called an emergency meeting. Ethan only knew about it because Victoria texted him at work asking if he could come by her office that evening. Something about the sabotage investigation. He showed up at 7 after dropping Sophie at a friend's house for a sleepover. Victoria's office was on the top floor, all windows and minimalist design. She was standing at one of those windows when he arrived, staring out at the city. Thanks for coming, she said without turning around. What's going on? We found Elena Marsh. Ethan went still. Where? Costa Rica. Living under a different name, but it's her. My investigators confirmed it this morning. Victoria finally turned to face him. She's the one who orchestrated everything. The fake adoption, the forged death certificate, telling me Sophie was dead. All of it. Why? Money. She was siphoning funds from the company for years. When I started asking questions about Sophie, she panicked. Thought if I found out my daughter was alive, I'd dig deeper into her other activities. So she made sure I'd never look. By telling you Sophie died. By telling me Sophie died, Victoria confirmed. And it worked for 7 years. Ethan sat down in one of the ridiculously uncomfortable modern chairs. So what now? You press charges? Already did. But extradition is complicated and she's got lawyers. It could take years to actually bring her back to face trial. Victoria's hands clenched into fists. I want her to pay for what she did. To me, to Sophie, to everyone she stole from. But the system doesn't work that fast. No, it doesn't. The sabotage was connected to her too. The contractor who planted the code? She hired him, paid him off with money she'd stolen from the company. This whole thing, the demonstration almost failing, people losing their jobs, everything, it all traces back to her. Ethan could hear the rage underneath Victoria's controlled tone. What do you need from me? I don't know, I needed to tell someone who'd understand what this means. It means you were right, about not trusting the adoption, about knowing something was wrong. A lot of good that did. I still believed her when she said Sophie was dead. I still stopped looking. You were 23 and grieving. She was someone you trusted. That's not your fault. Victoria laughed, bitter. Isn't it? I hired her. I let her into my life, into the company. I gave her access to everything, and she used it to steal my daughter and my money and my... She stopped, breathing hard. Ethan stood up and walked over to her. Hey, look at me. She did. You can't control what other people do. You can only control how you respond. And you responded by finding Sophie. by being part of her life now, by fixing what Elena broke. That matters. Does it? Because from where I'm standing, I'm just cleaning up messes that shouldn't have existed in the first place. That's what life is. Cleaning up messes, making the best of bad situations, moving forward even when you don't know where you're going. He paused. You're doing fine, Victoria. Better than fine. She looked at him for a long moment, then quietly, I don't feel fine. I feel angry and helpless, and like I want to get on a plane to Costa Rica and drag Elena back here myself. That would probably be illegal. I don't care. Yes, you do. Because you're not the kind of person who breaks the law just to make yourself feel better. You're the kind who works within the system even when it's frustrating. Victoria turned back to the window. I hate that you're right. Getting that a lot lately. They stood there in silence for a while. The city glittered below them, millions of people living their lives, oblivious to the drama playing out in this office. Can I ask you something? Victoria said finally. Sure. Do you ever regret it, taking Sophie in? Your whole life changed that night. You could have just called the police and walked away. Ethan thought about it, about the scared, exhausted version of himself who'd found a baby in his cab and couldn't leave her, about the years that followed, the struggle, the fear, the constant worry that he wasn't enough. No, he said, not once. Sophie saved me as much as I saved her, maybe more. How? I was drowning when I found her. After Sarah died, I was going through the motions, working myself to death because it was easier than feeling anything. Then suddenly I had this tiny person depending on me, and I had to figure out how to be alive again, how to care about something. Sophie gave me a reason to keep going. Victoria was quiet. Then, I think she's doing the same thing for me, giving me a reason to be more than just the CEO, more than just the ice queen everyone thinks I am. You were never just that, wasn't I? Before Sophie, my entire life was the company. I didn't have friends, didn't have hobbies, didn't have anything that mattered outside of work. I told myself that was enough, that success was enough. And now? Now I know it's not. Now I have Sophie and I have... She stopped. What? Nothing. Never mind. But Ethan knew what she'd been about to say. Because he felt it too, this thing building between them that neither of them knew how to name. His phone buzzed, a text from Sophie's friend's mom. Sophie's asking for you, says she can't sleep. Want me to bring her home? He showed the text to Victoria. I should go get her. I'll drive you. You don't have to. I want to. I could use the break from thinking about Elena. They took Victoria's car, which was probably worth more than Ethan made in 5 years. Sophie's friend lived in a neighborhood not far from theirs, in a small house with a yard that desperately needed mowing. Sophie ran out before they'd even parked, elephant tucked under her arm. Victoria rolled down the window. Hey, sweetheart. Rough night? I kept having bad dreams. About that lady, the one who lied to you. Victoria and Ethan exchanged glances. How do you know about her, Ethan asked as Sophie climbed into the back seat. I heard you guys talking last week, when you thought I was asleep. Sophie buckled herself in. Is she going to come back? Is she going to try to take me away again? No, Victoria said firmly. She's very far away, and she's never going to hurt you or your dad or anyone else ever again. Promise? I promise. Sophie seemed satisfied with that. She clutched her elephant and stared out the window as they drove. When they got back to the apartment, Sophie asked if Victoria could stay. Just for a little bit, she said. I don't want to be alone. I'm right here, kiddo, Ethan said. I know, but I want both of you. So Victoria stayed. They made popcorn and put on one of Sophie's favorite movies, something animated with talking animals. Sophie sat between them on the couch, gradually relaxing as the movie went on. Halfway through, she fell asleep. Ethan carefully extracted her and carried her to bed. When he came back, Victoria was still on the couch, staring at nothing. You okay? He asked. She had nightmares about Elena. Because of me. Because I brought all of this into her life. You didn't bring Elena into her life. Elena was already there, hiding in the background. At least now Sophie knows the truth. The truth that her birth mother gave her away, and then spent 7 years believing she was dead. That's a lot for a 7-year-old to process. She's tougher than you think. She shouldn't have to be tough. She should get to just be a kid. Ethan sat down next to her. She's just a kid who happens to have a complicated family situation, but she's handling it. We all are. Victoria looked at him. Are we? Because most of the time I feel like I'm one wrong move away from screwing everything up. Welcome to parenting. That feeling never goes away. How do you stand it? I don't know. I keep showing up, keep trying, keep hoping I'm doing more good than harm. He paused. And I remind myself that Sophie knows she's loved. That's the important part. As long as she knows that, the rest is just details. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I need to tell you something. Okay. The board wants me to step down. Ethan stared at her. What? After the sabotage thing? After Elena? After everything? They think I'm too young, too inexperienced, too much of a liability. They want to bring in someone older, more established. Someone who won't make the kinds of mistakes I've made. That's bullshit. Is it? I hired Elena. I trusted her. I let her steal from the company for years without noticing. I almost let her destroy everything with the sabotage. You also caught it, fixed it, saved the company. Barely. And only because you helped. So what are you going to do? Victoria laughed, tired. Fight, I guess. I didn't build this company just to hand it over to some board-approved puppet. But Ethan, I'm exhausted. I'm tired of fighting. Tired of proving myself. Tired of always being on guard against the next crisis. Then take a break. I can't. If I step back now, they'll use it as proof that I can't handle the pressure. Who cares what they think? I do. Because if I lose the company, I lose everything I've built, everything I've worked for since my parents died. Ethan studied her. Is that really what you're afraid of? Losing the company? Or is it something else? Victoria's jaw tightened. What else would it be? Losing yourself. The version of yourself you've been for the last decade. The CEO, the Ice Queen, the person who doesn't need anyone. He paused. You're changing, Victoria. Sophie's changing you. And I think that scares you more than any board meeting. She didn't answer for a long time. Then, quietly, what if I change too much? What if I stop being the person who can run a billion-dollar company and just become, I don't know, someone ordinary? Would that be so bad? I don't know. It's all I've been for so long. I don't know who I am without it. Ethan reached over and took her hand. She didn't pull away. You're Sophie's mom, he said. You're someone who shows up when people need help. You're someone who cares even when you pretend not to. That's who you are, with or without the company. Victoria's eyes were bright. When did you get so good at this? At what? Seeing through my bullshit. I've had practice. You're not as hard to read as you think. She smiled, sad. I should go. It's late. But she didn't move, didn't let go of his hand. Victoria, Ethan said quietly. Yeah? You know you don't have to do this alone, right? The board thing, the company, all of it. You've got people now, people who want to help. I'm not used to asking for help. I know, but maybe that's something else you could practice. She looked at him and something in her expression shifted. Ethan, His phone rang, shattering the moment. He pulled it out, saw an unknown number. Sorry, might be work, he answered. Hello? Is this Ethan Cole? A woman's voice, professional. Yeah, who's this? Detective Sarah Chen with the NYPD. I'm calling about Elena Marsh. We have some questions about her connection to your daughter's adoption. Would you be available to come down to the station tomorrow? Ethan looked at Victoria. Yeah, I can do that. What time? They set up an appointment and he hung up. The police want to talk to me about Elena, he said. They called me too, earlier today. They're building a case against her for fraud, embezzlement, forging legal documents. They want our statements. Are you going to give one? Yes. I want her prosecuted for everything she did. I want her to pay. Even if it means dragging all of this into the public? Victoria was quiet. The board's going to use it against me. They'll say I can't keep my personal life separate from the company, that I'm a distraction. Let them. You've got the demonstration, the successful launch, 3 years of growth. Your record speaks for itself. Does it? Or does it just prove I'm good at recovering from disasters I should have prevented in the first place? Before Ethan could answer, Sophie appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes. I heard talking. What's happening? Nothing, sweetheart, Victoria said quickly. Just grown-up stuff. Go back to bed. Are you and Dad fighting? No, we're just talking. Sophie studied them both. You look sad. Both of you. We're okay, Ethan said. Come on, I'll tuck you back in. But Sophie walked over to Victoria instead and hugged her. Don't be sad. Whatever's wrong, it'll be okay. That's what Dad always tells me. Victoria's arms came up slowly, carefully, and wrapped around Sophie. Your dad's a smart man. I know, that's why I listen to him. You should too. When Sophie was finally back in bed for real, Ethan walked Victoria to the door. She's right, you know, he said. It will be okay. Whatever the board does, whatever happens with Elena, you'll handle it. How can you be so sure? Because you're Victoria Hale. You don't give up. You fight. She smiled slightly. Even when I'm tired of fighting? Especially then. Victoria stepped closer. For a moment, Ethan thought she might kiss him. The air between them felt charged, heavy with possibility. But she just squeezed his hand and said, Thank you. For tonight. For everything. Then she left, and Ethan stood in his doorway wondering what the hell was happening to his carefully organized life. The board meeting was scheduled for Monday morning. Victoria spent the weekend preparing, running through presentations, rehearsing answers to potential questions, trying to build a case for why she should stay on as CEO. Her apartment was covered in papers and charts and financial projections. Sunday afternoon, there was a knock on her door. She opened it to find Ethan and Sophie, along with half a dozen people she recognized from the office. David, Rebecca, Martin, others from the team that had worked around the clock to fix the sabotage. What's going on? Victoria asked. We're here to help, Rebecca said, walking in without waiting for an invitation. We heard about the board meeting. We're not letting them push you out. You don't have to. Yes, we do, David said. You saved this company. You saved our jobs. We're returning the favor. For the next 6 hours, they worked together building Victoria's defense, employee testimonials, success metrics, projections for the next 5 years. They compiled a presentation that made it impossible to argue Victoria was anything other than a successful, visionary CEO. Sophie sat at the table drawing while the adults worked. Every so often, she'd look up and say something that cut right to the heart of whatever they were arguing about. Why are you trying to prove you're smart? She asked at one point. Everyone already knows you're smart. Just show them you care about the company and the people. That's what matters. The room went quiet. Out of the mouths of babes, Rebecca muttered. They restructured the entire presentation around that concept. Not just numbers and growth, but the human side of Victoria's leadership. The employee program she'd implemented, the safety protocols, the way she'd handled the crisis with transparency and accountability. By the time everyone left Sunday night, Victoria felt almost prepared. Almost. Ethan stayed behind to help clean up. Sophie had fallen asleep on the couch. You're ready, he said, collecting empty coffee cups. Am I? Because I still feel like I'm about to walk into a firing squad. You've got a solid case, and you've got people backing you. That's more than most CEOs can say. What if it's not enough? Then you walk away knowing you did everything you could, and you figure out what's next. Victoria sat down at the table, suddenly exhausted. I don't know what's next. This company is all I've had for so long. If I lose it, you'll still have Sophie. You'll still have... He paused. You'll still have a life outside of work. People who care about you. She looked at him. Is that what you are? Someone who cares about me? Yeah, I think that's exactly what I am. Victoria stood up and walked over to him, close enough that he could see the exhaustion in her face, the fear she was trying to hide. Ethan, she said quietly, I need you to know something. Before tomorrow. Before everything potentially falls apart. Okay? I'm terrified. Not just of losing the company. Of losing this, you and Sophie, and whatever we're building here. I've never had this before. People I could actually count on. A family. And I'm scared I'm going to ruin it somehow. You're not going to ruin it. How do you know? Because you care too much to let that happen. Because you show up, even when it's hard. Because you're trying, and that's what matters. Victoria reached up and touched his face, gentle. When did you become the person I can't imagine my life without? Ethan's heart kicked against his ribs. Probably around the same time you became that person for me. This time, when Victoria kissed him, he kissed her back. It wasn't dramatic or movie perfect. It was tentative and uncertain and tasted like coffee and hope. It was two people who'd been through hell finding something soft and good in each other. When they pulled apart, Victoria rested her forehead against his. I'm still terrified, she whispered. Me too. Good. At least we're terrified together. They stood like that for a long moment, holding on to each other in Victoria's expensive apartment, while Sophie slept on the couch and the city hummed below them. Tomorrow, Victoria would face the board. Tomorrow, everything might change. But tonight, they had this. And for now, that was enough. Monday morning arrived cold and gray, the kind of weather that made you want to stay in bed and pretend the world didn't exist. Victoria stood in front of her closet at 5 a.m., staring at rows of expensive suits that all looked the same. Power clothes. Armor. The uniform of someone who'd spent a decade trying to prove she belonged in rooms full of men twice her age who thought she was too young, too female, too everything. She pulled out the black suit, then put it back. Reached for the navy one, hesitated. Her phone buzzed, a text from Ethan. You've got this. Sophie and I believe in you. Attached was a photo of Sophie still in her pajamas, holding up a sign that said, Victoria is the best CEO in crayon, with flowers drawn around the edges. Victoria felt something in her chest crack open. She sat down on the edge of her bed and stared at the photo until her eyes burned. She texted back, Thank you, both of you. Then she got dressed in the navy suit, pulled her hair back, and tried to remember why she'd wanted this job in the first place. The boardroom was on the 40th floor, all mahogany and leather and windows that looked out over the city her company had helped build. 12 board members sat around the table when Victoria walked in at 8 a.m. sharp. Most of them were men over 50. A few were investors who'd made their fortunes in tech decades ago and now spent their time telling younger people how to run companies. Victoria took her seat at the head of the table and opened her laptop. Good morning, she said, keeping her voice level. I understand there are concerns about my leadership. I'd like to address them. Richard Morrison, the board chairman, leaned back in his chair. He'd been friends with Victoria's father once, back before the accident. Now he looked at her like she was a problem to be solved. Victoria, we appreciate your passion for this company, he started, in that tone people used when they were about to say something terrible. But recent events have raised serious questions about your judgment. The sabotage, the security breach, the connection to your personal life. The sabotage I caught and fixed, Victoria interrupted. The security breach I addressed before any real damage was done. And my personal life has nothing to do with my ability to run this company. Doesn't it? This from Margaret Chen, one of the few women on the board. You hired Elena Marsh. You trusted her for years while she embezzled millions. That's a judgment issue. Elena fooled everyone, not just me. She had references, credentials, years of experience. And yes, I should have caught it sooner. But I did catch it. And I've implemented new oversight protocols to ensure it never happens again. That's reactive, not proactive, Richard said. The board needs leadership that prevents crises, not just responds to them. Victoria felt her jaw tighten. With respect, that's an impossible standard. Every company faces crises. The measure of leadership isn't whether problems occur, it's how they're handled, and I handled this one. The demonstration was successful. The vehicles work. Our stock price is up 15% since Friday. Short-term gains don't address long-term concerns about stability. What concerns specifically? Because from where I'm sitting, this looks less like legitimate criticism and more like an excuse to push out a CEO you never fully supported in the first place. The room went quiet. Richard's expression hardened. That's not fair, isn't it? I've grown this company 30% in 6 years. I've launched 3 successful product lines. I've brought in major contracts, expanded into new markets, and yes, I've made mistakes. But my track record speaks for itself. Your father, my father is dead. Victoria's voice cut like glass. He's been dead for 11 years, and I'm tired of being measured against him instead of being evaluated on my own merit. Margaret shifted in her seat. Victoria, no one is saying you haven't accomplished things. But the Elena situation, Combined with your personal complications, the daughter, the adoption fraud, it's creating distractions the company can't afford. My daughter is not a distraction. She's my family, and the fact that I have a personal life doesn't make me less capable of doing this job. If anything, it makes me better at it. How do you figure that? Richard asked. Victoria thought about Sophie's sign, about Ethan showing up at 2 a.m. because she'd asked, about the team working all weekend to help her prepare for this meeting. Because I understand now that success isn't just about profits and growth, she said. It's about people. The employees who depend on this company for their livelihoods, the families they're supporting, the communities we're part of. I spent years thinking I had to be cold and detached to be taken seriously. That caring made me weak. I was wrong. That's very touching, Richard said, and his tone made it clear he didn't think it was touching at all. But sentimentality doesn't run companies. Hard decisions do. And we're not convinced you can make those decisions anymore. What decision do you want me to make? Fire more people? Cut programs? Prioritize profits over everything else? Victoria leaned forward. I can make hard decisions. I've been making them for years, but I'm not going to sacrifice the people who built this company just to make shareholders happy for one quarter. That's exactly the kind of thinking that concerns us. Then I guess we have different definitions of leadership. The meeting went on for another hour. Arguments, counter-arguments, financial projections, employee testimonials that Rebecca had compiled. Victoria presented everything her team had prepared, watched board members check their phones and whisper to each other, and felt the outcome taking shape before anyone said it out loud. Finally, Richard called for a vote. All in favor of accepting Victoria Hale's resignation as CEO, effective immediately? 7 hands went up. Victoria's stomach dropped. Opposed? 5 hands, including Margaret's. Richard looked at Victoria with something that might have been pity. I'm sorry, Victoria. We'll announce your departure at the end of the quarter. That gives us time to find a replacement and ensure a smooth transition. Victoria stood up slowly. She felt numb, disconnected from her body. I won't resign. I'm sorry? You can't force me to resign. I still own 20% of this company. My parents left it to me, and I'm not walking away just because you've decided I'm not good enough. Victoria, be reasonable. I am being reasonable. You want me gone? Fire me. Put it in the public record that you terminated the CEO who just delivered your most successful product launch in 5 years. See how that plays with investors. The room was silent. You're making this harder than it needs to be, Richard said finally. Good. Because you're making a mistake, and I'm not going to make it easy for you. Victoria closed her laptop, picked up her bag, and walked out. She made it to her office before the shaking started, sat down at her desk, and stared at nothing while her hands trembled and her breath came too fast. There was a knock on the door. Rebecca poked her head in. I heard, she said quietly. I'm sorry. It's fine. I expected it. No, you didn't. None of us did. Rebecca came in and closed the door. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. Fight, probably. Lose, definitely. But I'll do it on my terms. Rebecca was quiet for a moment. For what it's worth, they're idiots. This company needs you. Apparently the board disagrees. The board is made up of old men who are threatened by you. That's not the same thing as you being bad at your job. Victoria almost smiled. Thanks. I mean it. And Victoria, whatever happens, a lot of us are with you, just so you know. After Rebecca left, Victoria sat alone in her office for a long time. She thought about calling Ethan, then decided against it. What would she even say? That she'd failed? That the board had won? That she'd spent 11 years building something just to watch it get taken away? Her phone rang. An unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Hello? Ms. Hale? This is Detective Chen. We spoke last week about Elena Marsh. Yes, what can I do for you? I wanted to let you know we've made progress on the case. Costa Rican authorities have agreed to extradition. Miss Marsh should be back in the country within the month to face charges. Victoria closed her eyes. That's good news. It is. And Ms. Hale? I know this has been difficult. The adoption fraud, the embezzlement, all of it. But you did the right thing coming forward. Whatever she did, you're not responsible for it. Thank you, Detective. After she hung up, Victoria sat there staring at her phone. Elena would face trial. Justice would be served, eventually. But it didn't change what had been lost. The years with Sophie, the money stolen, the trust betrayed. Some things couldn't be fixed, no matter how hard you fought. Victoria left the office early, drove to her apartment, changed into jeans, and then just sat on her couch wondering what the hell she was supposed to do now. Around 3, there was a knock on her door. She opened it to find Ethan and Sophie. Sophie was still in her school uniform, backpack slung over one shoulder. "What are you doing here?" Victoria asked. "Sophie insisted," Ethan said. "She had a feeling you needed us." Sophie pushed past Victoria into the apartment and set her backpack down. "Did the meeting go bad? How did you... You have your sad face on, the one you get when something goes wrong but you're pretending it's fine." Victoria looked at Ethan, who shrugged. "Kid's perceptive." "They voted me out," Victoria said. "The board. They want me to resign as CEO." Sophie's face scrunched up. "That's stupid. You're the best CEO." "They don't think so." "Then they're wrong." Sophie came over and hugged Victoria's waist. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet, sweetheart. Maybe nothing. Maybe there's nothing I can do." "Yes, there is. You can fight, like you taught me to do with Marcus." Sophie pulled back and looked up at her. "You said I should stand up for what's right, even when it's hard. So you should too." Victoria felt her throat get tight. "It's more complicated than that." "Why?" "Because grown-up things always are." "That's a dumb answer." "Sophie," Ethan said, but Victoria shook her head. "She's right. It is a dumb answer." Victoria sat down on the floor so she was eye level with Sophie. "The truth is I'm tired. I've been fighting for so long to prove I deserve to run the company, to be taken seriously, to show everyone I'm good enough. And I don't know if I have any fight left." Sophie thought about this. "When I'm tired, you and Dad tell me to rest. Then I can fight again later." "That's true. So maybe you should rest. And then when you're ready, you can show them they were wrong." Victoria looked at Ethan over Sophie's head. He was smiling slightly. "She's not wrong," he said. "When did she get so smart?" "She's always been smart. You're just noticing it now." Sophie grabbed Victoria's hand. "Can we have dinner? I'm hungry, and you have better food than Dad." "That's because I order it instead of cooking it." "I know, but it still tastes better." So they ordered dinner, Chinese food that came in containers Sophie insisted on eating directly from instead of using plates. They sat on Victoria's couch watching a movie Sophie picked, something with princesses and magic and a happy ending. Halfway through, Sophie fell asleep between them. Ethan looked at Victoria. "You okay?" "Not really, but I will be." "What are you going to do about the board?" "I don't know yet. Part of me wants to fight. The other part wants to just walk away and be done with it." "What do you want? Not what you think you should do. What do you actually want?" Victoria was quiet for a long time. "I want to matter. Not as a CEO or a billionaire or anything else. I want to matter to people. The way you matter to Sophie. The way she matters to both of us." "You already do that." "Do I?" "Because from where I'm sitting, I've spent 30 years building things that don't actually mean anything. A company that's going to replace me. An apartment that echoes when I walk through it. A reputation that only exists because I've kept everyone at arm's length." "That's not true." "Isn't it? Before Sophie, before you, what did I have? Work. That's it. Just work." Ethan reached over and took her hand. "You have more than that now." "For how long? What happens when you realize I'm too much work, too damaged, too complicated, too—" "Stop." Ethan's voice was quiet but firm. "You're not too anything. You're just human. And humans are messy and complicated and, yeah, sometimes exhausting. But that doesn't make you not worth it." Victoria's eyes were burning. "How do you know?" "Because I've seen you with Sophie. I've seen you stay up all night fixing a crisis. I've seen you show up when you didn't have to, care when it would have been easier not to, try when you were terrified of failing. That's worth it. You're worth it. Even without the company? Especially without the company, because then you're just Victoria, and Victoria is pretty great." She kissed him then, soft and desperate. When they pulled apart, Sophie was still asleep between them, oblivious. "I don't know what I'm doing," Victoria whispered. "Neither do I. But we'll figure it out. Together? Yeah, together." The next few weeks were strange. Victoria still went to the office, but everything felt different. The board was searching for her replacement, and she spent her days training people who would take over her responsibilities, watching her company prepare to move on without her. It should have felt like dying. Instead, it felt like breathing. She started leaving the office at 5 instead of 8. Started having dinner with Ethan and Sophie 3 or 4 nights a week. Started remembering what it felt like to have a life outside of work. Sophie's school had a parent art night, and Victoria went. Stood in the gymnasium looking at children's paintings while other parents made small talk about teachers and homework and weekend plans. Normal parent things. Sophie dragged her over to a painting of their building. All 3 apartments visible in different windows. One showed Ethan cooking, one showed Victoria reading, one showed Sophie drawing. "It's us," Sophie explained. "Our family." One of the other mothers glanced at Victoria. "You're Victoria Hale, aren't you? I read about the board situation. I'm sorry." Victoria expected to feel embarrassed, exposed. Instead, she just felt tired. "Thank you," she said. "For what it's worth, I think you're brilliant. My husband works in tech, and he says everyone in the industry thinks the board is making a huge mistake." "That's kind of you to say?" The woman smiled. "It's true. But I also think sometimes the best thing that can happen to us is losing something we thought we couldn't live without. It makes room for better things." She walked away before Victoria could respond. Sophie tugged on her sleeve. "Do you like my painting?" "I love it, sweetheart. Can I keep it?" "Only if you hang it up, not like in storage, somewhere you'll see it every day." "Deal." That night, Victoria hung the painting in her apartment, right by the door where she'd see it every time she came home. A week later, Victoria got a call from a venture capital firm. They'd heard about the board situation and wanted to talk about opportunities. Would she be interested in starting something new? They had investors ready. Victoria scheduled a meeting, then canceled it. She didn't want to start something new. She wanted to figure out what she actually cared about first. She started volunteering at Sophie's school, helping with the art program. Turned out she was terrible at art, but decent at organizing supplies and talking to kids about creativity. The teacher, Ms. Chen, was grateful for the help. "Most parents are too busy to volunteer," she said. "It's nice having someone who actually shows up." Victoria thought about that, about showing up, about how much of her life she'd spent being too busy for things that actually mattered. She started showing up to more things. Sophie's soccer practice, school pickups, weekend breakfast with Ethan where they didn't talk about anything important, just sat together reading the paper and drinking coffee while Sophie did puzzles at the table. It was so normal, it hurt. One morning, Ethan asked her what she was going to do long term. "I don't know," Victoria admitted. "I never planned for a life after the company. I thought I'd just keep running it until I couldn't anymore." "So plan now. What would you want to do if you could do anything?" Victoria thought about it. "I'd want to help people, not in some abstract corporate responsibility way. Actually help. Fix problems. Make things better." "There are a lot of ways to do that." "I know, that's the problem. Too many options." Sophie looked up from her puzzle. "You could start a company that helps kids, like kids whose parents can't afford art supplies or whose families need help." Victoria and Ethan looked at each other. "That's actually not a bad idea," Ethan said. "It's not?" "No, you've got the business skills, the connections, the money. Why not use it for something that matters to you?" Victoria let the idea sit in her head for a few days. Then she made some calls. By the end of the month, she'd filed paperwork for a new foundation. The Sophie Cole Foundation for Family Services, named after the daughter who'd taught her what actually mattered. The mission was simple: help families in crisis, adoption support, financial assistance, legal aid, whatever was needed. The first office was in Victoria's old neighborhood, in a building that had seen better days but had good light and plenty of space. Sophie came to the opening, wearing a dress she'd picked out herself and the silver bracelet on her wrist. "This is because of me?" she asked, looking around. "This is because you taught me something important," Victoria said. "That love is more powerful than money. That family isn't about biology, it's about showing up. That the best things in life are the ones you build together, not alone." Sophie hugged her. "I'm proud of you." Victoria felt her eyes sting. "I'm proud of you too." Ethan stood nearby, watching them. When Sophie ran off to explore the office, he walked over. "You did good," he said. Haven't done anything yet. Just set up an office. You did more than that. You figured out what you actually want. That's harder than it sounds. Victoria leaned against him. I want this. The foundation. Sophie. You. A life that's about more than just work. You've got it. All of it. Do I? Because we've never actually talked about what this is. Us. Ethan was quiet for a moment. What do you want it to be? Something real. Something that lasts. Something I don't screw up. You're not going to screw it up. How do you know? Because you care too much. Because you show up. Because you're trying. He pulled back and looked at her. I love you, Victoria. I've been trying not to say it because I didn't want to make things more complicated. But I do. I love you. Victoria felt like she couldn't breathe. Why? Why what? Why do you love me? I'm difficult and damaged, and I barely know how to be human half the time. Because you're brave. Because you're honest. Because you love Sophie so fiercely, it makes me understand what it means to be a parent. Because you make me laugh. Because you're trying to be better, and that's the sexiest thing I've ever seen. Victoria kissed him right there in the empty office that smelled like paint and new beginnings. I love you too, she said when they pulled apart. I didn't know I could. I thought I'd broken that part of myself. But you fixed it. You and Sophie. We didn't fix you. You were never broken. You were just waiting for the right people. Sophie's voice echoed from somewhere deeper in the building. Are you guys kissing? That's gross. They laughed, and Victoria realized she couldn't remember the last time she'd felt this light. 6 months later, the foundation was thriving. They'd helped 12 families navigate adoptions, provided financial support to 15 more, and started a legal aid program for parents dealing with custody issues. It wasn't saving the world, but it was helping people. Real people with real problems. Victoria worked reasonable hours, came home to dinners with Ethan and Sophie, spent weekends at the park or the museum, or just at home watching movies. Her apartment wasn't empty anymore. Sophie's drawings covered the walls. Ethan's jacket hung by the door. There were dishes in the sink and shoes by the couch and all the beautiful mess of people actually living there. One evening, after Sophie was asleep in the guest room that had officially become her room, Ethan and Victoria sat on the balcony watching the city lights. I got a call from Richard Morrison today, Victoria said. The board chairman? Yeah, he wanted to tell me the new CEO is already having problems. Stock price is down, employees are leaving, the autonomous vehicle program is stalled. What did you say? I said that was unfortunate, and I hoped they figured it out. Then I hung up. Ethan smiled. You didn't gloat? I wanted to. But gloating would mean I still cared about proving them wrong. And I don't anymore. They made their choice. I made mine. Both of us get to live with it. That's very mature of you. Sophie's rubbing off on me. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Victoria said, I was thinking about something. Yeah? Sophie's birthday is next month. She'll be 8. And I was thinking I'd like to officially adopt her. I know you're her legal parent and nothing changes that. But I'd like to make it official that I'm her parent too, if that's okay with you. Ethan looked at her. You want to go through the legal process? I do. I want her to know that I'm choosing her, officially, permanently, the way you did 7 years ago. We'd have to explain it to her, make sure she understands what it means. I know. But Ethan, I want to do this right. I want her to know that I'm not going anywhere, that she's stuck with me whether she likes it or not. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, Okay, let's do it. Let's tell her together. They told Sophie the following weekend over breakfast. She listened carefully, asked questions, wanted to know if it meant she'd have to change her name. You can keep Cole if you want, Victoria said, or you could be Sophie Cole Hale, or we can figure out something else entirely. It's your choice. Sophie thought about it. Can I be Sophie Cole Hale? With no hyphen? Just all 3 names? If that's what you want. And you'll both be my parents? Like, officially? Officially, Victoria confirmed. And nothing changes except paperwork? That's right. Sophie grinned. Okay, let's do it. But I want to help with the paperwork. I want to sign things. You're 7. You can't... Victoria stopped. You know what? Sure, you can sign things. The adoption process took 3 months. Sophie attended every meeting, asked questions, took the whole thing very seriously. On the day the judge finalized it, Sophie wore her best dress and brought her elephant for moral support. When it was done, when the papers were signed and filed and official, Sophie hugged both of them. "Now we're a real family," she said. "We were always a real family," Ethan corrected gently. "I know, but now everyone else knows it too." They celebrated at Sophie's favorite restaurant, a diner with terrible coffee and amazing pancakes. Sophie ordered chocolate chip pancakes with extra whipped cream and talked nonstop about her upcoming birthday party. "Can we invite my whole class?" she asked. "That's like 20 kids," Ethan said. 22, but 3 of them probably won't come because they go to their dads on weekends. Victoria laughed. "Sure, we'll invite everyone. And can we do it at your office, the foundation place? It's bigger than our apartment." "I think we can arrange that." Sophie's birthday party ended up being chaotic and perfect. 20 kids running around the foundation office, playing games, eating cake, making a mess. Parents stood around drinking coffee and making small talk. One of them asked Victoria what it was like not being a CEO anymore. "Honestly," Victoria said, watching Sophie laugh with her friends, "it's the best thing that ever happened to me. I thought I'd hate it. Turns out I just hated being unhappy." "What changed?" Victoria looked at Ethan across the room, helping a kid who'd spilled juice on himself. Then at Sophie, who was showing off her new painting supplies to anyone who'd listen. "I found something better to care about," she said. Later that night, after everyone had gone home and they'd cleaned up the worst of the mess, the 3 of them sat in Victoria's apartment eating leftover cake directly from the container. "Best birthday ever," Sophie declared. "You say that every year," Ethan pointed out, "because every year is better than the last one." She looked at Victoria. "Are you happy?" "Yeah, sweetheart. I really am." "Good. Because you smile more now. I like it when you smile." After Sophie went to bed, Victoria and Ethan sat on the couch together. "She's right, you know," Ethan said. "You do smile more." "That's because I have things to smile about now. This, us, Sophie. A life that's actually worth living. No regrets about the company?" Victoria thought about it. "Sometimes I miss it. The challenges, the wins, the feeling of building something. But mostly, I'm just glad I got out before it consumed me completely, before I lost sight of what actually matters. Which is this, right here. You and me and Sophie, the foundation. Making a difference in small ways that actually mean something. I spent so long chasing success, thinking it would make me happy. Turns out happiness was waiting right here the whole time. I just had to slow down long enough to see it." Ethan kissed her temple. "For what it's worth, I think you're exactly where you're supposed to be." "Yeah?" "Yeah." They sat there in the quiet apartment, listening to the city sounds outside and Sophie's soft breathing from the other room. It wasn't perfect. Nothing ever was. But it was real and honest and theirs. And for the first time in her life, Victoria Hale felt like she was home. A year later, Ethan proposed. Not with some elaborate plan or expensive ring, just a simple question one ordinary Tuesday evening after dinner. "Will you marry me?" Victoria stared at him. "Are you serious?" "Completely. I know we're already basically a family. I know we're doing fine as we are. But I want to make it official. I want everyone to know you're mine and I'm yours and we're in this together. So will you?" Sophie, who'd been pretending to watch TV but was clearly listening, shouted, "Say yes!" Victoria laughed through tears. "Yes, obviously yes." The wedding was small. Just Sophie, a few friends from the foundation, Ethan's coworkers from the garage, some of Sophie's school friends. They got married in the park where they'd spent so many Saturday mornings, with Sophie as the flower girl wearing a dress she'd helped design. When the officiant asked if anyone objected, Sophie raised her hand. "I object to not having cake yet. Can we skip to that part?" Everyone laughed, and the ceremony continued. Victoria's vows were simple. "I spent 30 years thinking I had to be perfect to deserve love. Then I met you and Sophie, and you taught me that love isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up, trying, caring enough to keep going even when it's hard. You gave me a family when I thought I'd lost that chance forever. You gave me a life worth living. I promise to show up for you every single day for the rest of our lives." Ethan's vows made her cry. Sophie's reading, a poem she'd written about families, made everyone cry. When it was over, when they'd cut the cake and taken photos and celebrated, The three of them walked home together through the city that had brought them together in the first place. Are we different now that you're married? Sophie asked. Not really, Victoria said. We're still us, just with rings and a certificate that says we're official. Good, because I like us the way we are. Me too, kiddo, Ethan said. Me too. Victoria looked at her family, the daughter she'd lost and found again. The man who'd taught her what love actually meant, the life they'd built together from broken pieces, and felt something settle in her chest. Maybe happiness wasn't about having everything figured out. Maybe it was about finding people who made you want to keep trying, even when things got hard. People who saw your worst parts and loved you anyway. People who felt like home. She'd spent so long building empires and chasing success and trying to prove she was enough. And all along, she'd already been enough. She just needed to find people who could see it. Now she had them. Now she was home. And that was more than enough.